is Esoteric Guides, and Happy New Year, everyone. Cheers.
Happy New Year.
The portal is opening.
Oh boy.
Here, Susan. And tonight we have some great occult minds who can see beyond the veil and give us a bit of insight into what to expect in 2023. So this isn't a prediction show like last year. It's I don't really believe that the future is written in stone. It changes, and as some of our guests will attest to, we can change the future. But we do need to be aware of the currents that are at play, and that is where occultism comes in. So why do we call this an occult view of 2023? The occult, Steve can attest, is hidden, and its practitioners move and act in silence. So it seems like spirituality lately has become a political movement with some mysticism thrown in, especially all these like TikTok witches, right? But the cultist is devoted to one thing. It's absolute freedom for the human soul. The cultist stands apart from the group, from the herd. I think Aleister Crowley, some people don't like him. Some people, obviously really like him. His Liber Oz, I think, really sums things up really well. Not quoting the whole document, but man has the right to live by his own law, to live in the way that he wills to do. Man has the right to eat what he will, to drink what he will, to dwell where he will. Man has the right to think what he will, to speak what he will, to write what he will, to draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, to dress as he will. And man has the right to love as he will. But I'd also add to that, though you can't really add to these documents, man has the right to also refuse to put things in his body that the state says he should, not to get too political. And I think a lot of this is the crux of what we're facing to 2023. In looking at 2023, I see three different words come up: control, polarization, and virtue. Last year, I thought the energy was moving us toward war. I feel this year the energy is moving us more toward control and a sort of a status quo. And 23, I think, is going to set us up for 2024, which I think is another story altogether. So this really is a landmark year. It's a year that I think people really need to get active and involved and spiritually, bring their spiritual selves up to the highest potential. The control issue, as we can see it, these global oligarchs, as they've been called, they continue to impose draconian control over the all over the population. And if you go against them, you get canceled. If that doesn't work, you're going to get arrested. And if that doesn't work, you can be killed. You can look at Andrew Tate as a good example. He went against sort of the narrative, the mainstream narrative, and he's been canceled. That didn't work. Now they're arresting him. And, so that's an interesting case to see what happens, whether you like him or not. And also, this is related to virtue. What is virtue now in our culture? And I think a lot of times right now, the mainstream narrative pushed in the media is that we have to believe in things that really aren't true. For instance, a mask can protect you against a virus, right? So that's actually not true, but we were forced to believe this. And again, it is virtuous. For instance, a man can have a baby, and that is obviously impossible. But if you don't accept this, you're not virtuous in this current society, correct? And I think this is really dangerous because, as philosopher Hannah Arendt noted, totalitarianism in its essence is an attempt at transforming reality into fiction. And I think this is the danger of these little lies. As we accept them, they disorient, confuse, divide, and suddenly the big lie is palatable. And finally, we see polarization. It really is. I mean, some people are seeing through this and some people are actually accepting this. And I'd say it's 50-50. And no matter how much information you put out there, some people are going to, still believe the mainstream culture. But I think these are dangerous times. And in the next year, I think is going to be very crucial for the future. So I'm going to make some mundane predictions, even though this really isn't a prediction show. These are some of the things that have come to me during morning meditations. I see in 2023, Islam is going to become a cultural counterweight to mainstream woke culture. It's going from a demonized religion to a cultural trend, thanks to high-profile conversions like Andrew Tate. And actually, the World Cup actually helped to expose the world to an Islamic country. It was the first time, I believe, the World Cup ever happened in an Islamic country. So, I'm seeing this happening. And of course, other people have said Europe is actually on its way to becoming an Islamic state by the year 2050. Just something that came to me, I would say, with the exception of parts of France. And anyone, please jump in. I'd like to hear comments. Second prediction, there'll be the growth of a Luddite movement, which will start in Brooklyn, New York, where hipsters are going to go against sort of the counterculture will be against technology. They're going to adopt pre-technological means of communication, like letter writing and rotary dial landline phones. That's going to be like sort of a hip movement now. It's like anti-technology movement, and that's going to start, I believe, in Brooklyn. Sort of linked to this, because of all of the, control, there's going to be a growth in temporary autonomous zones, particularly in magical cities like New York, where you can go into a bar, which would be like going back in time. In a way, these are like magical portals. I believe we're going to see the return of underground opium dens in New York City as trendsetters and hipsters go back to traditional drugs like opium hashish. You're seeing it already in Jackson Heights, to be honest with you. Along these lines, in 2023, I see the establishment of temporary autonomous zone countries, like a small little country, which offers complete freedom, a sort of a Vanuatu for free thinkers, like a duty-free zone for ideas, almost like if Burning Man became a permanent country, but it's going to be an island. Anyway, wishful thinking. Another prediction, White House spokesperson Pierre Jean-Marie will step down and be fired in 2023 after she reveals that she has been engaged in a heterosexual relationship, which causes a scandal in the Biden administration. Comments? That's sort of a joke. I do believe, though, Biden will step down this year because of health issues. And Kamala Harris will become president. I predicted this last year. Didn't come true. Anyway.
Did you say that Corinne Jean-Pierre is going to be caught in a heterosexual relationship?
Yeah.
No.
Came to me in a vision. What can I say?
Wait. All right, I'll get off now.
That wasn't completely serious, but so in the fashion world, I see a trend of wearable furniture where you have a coat that turns into a portable chair. It's sort of using latest technology. It's part of a hobo culture trend that I see of almost like a Jack Kerouac on the road. The hipsters basically skewing the mainstream culture. So those are my predictions.
They have a coat there that is actually a tent or a sleeping bag.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's going to become a thing.
Yeah.
We can walk around.
Never know when you want to just
turn your coat into a tent.
Yeah.
So anyway, our first guest is Steve Spear. He's an amazing artist, occult artist. He's done a number of different, also a musician. He knows every occultist, I think, in New York City. He keeps a little bit of a low profile, right? And Steve, how's it going? You look like you're in a hot tub.
No, I'm sitting here. It's hot, and I'm wearing shorts. It's hot in Lauderdale, and I'm in Lauderdale for a couple of weeks. I got away well, one of the things, Scott, that I'm doing that we've talked about is the medical freedom party.
Yeah, that's what we want to talk about. So let me,
Yeah,
so
I
he's,
want to go into that a little bit.
absolutely.
But this is my window of getting away before I start petitioning in February to get people
Yeah.
on the ballot.
So
But
this
if I have a chance, Scott, I actually did. This morning I woke up and said, I have some notes that I'm going to go through.
absolutely.
Right? But
Absolutely.
before I do that, if you have a minute for me, as I was
Sure.
doing my notes, Giordano Bruno popped into my head a bit because of the idea of memetics and things like that. We live in a meme society, and this memetic currents that are going. Use the word currents, and so I have Expulsion of the Triumphant Beast, and I opened it up. I said, let me just do a kind of bookomancy, and I opened it up to a page, and
1 second, let me mute.
it was pretty interesting what I got. So if you don't mind, it's 20 lines.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And it has to do with, this, I believe, I only read it once this time, as I do believe it has to do, it talks about, I'll read it and maybe we'll talk about it for a second. So Giordano Bruno, third dialogue, first part, Expulsion of the Triumphant Beast. Oh, thou beautiful golden age, not because the river with milk did flow, and the woods honey did distill, not because the lands yielded their fruit untouched by the plow, and without anger and without venom the serpents did roam, not because the dark cloud did not then spread its veil, and the heaven did smile with light and serenity, in eternal spring now aglow and verdant, not because the pine bark to another's shore conveyed not the wanderer or wood or war or goods, but only because that vain name without subject, that idol of errors, idol of deceit, later called honor by the insane rabble, which made tyrant over our nature, do not intermingle its anguish with the happy sweetness of the loving flock. Nor was its harsh rule known among those souls to liberty accustomed, but a golden rule and happy, engraved by nature. If it pleaseth, it is permitted unto you. Okay, that's just a pretty interesting poem. And I wanted to mention that when you were talking about, you were reading Liberaz, the Jack Parsons stuff that always comes to mind, the freedom is a two-edged sword. And what's really interesting is, just so anybody who cares, Van Morrison has been a real anti-mandate guy, doing a lot of anti-mandate songs. He has his last two records, What's It Gonna Take and Greatest Record Album or something. Two last records are all anti-mandate songs. And one of them is called Absolutely Positively. And what's really interesting is he's quoting from Freedom is a Two-Edged Sword.
Oh, that's interesting.
On a mainstream record in association with a sort of an anti-mandate stance, So what, and I think what Bruno is sitting there talking about tyrants, and if it pleaseth you, if it pleaseth you, what was the line? If it pleaseth, it is permitted unto you, right? So we get into this idea of liberty, right? And what is liberty? And I'm going I'm riffing here, but one of the things I think about what's going on now is that liberty, fraternity, and equality, these kind of Rosicrucian ideals, only came into place in the 1500s, right? Before that, they weren't part of human culture. You were the king, you bow, there was a pyramid, and liberty, fraternity, equality decided that people had a right to their own bodies and a right to their own liberties, and to chooseth what they will if it pleaseth them. With of course within certain boundaries, but those boundaries were defined kind of maybe communally or something, as how we thought. So I'm just gonna. When I woke up this morning, I had my sort of vision. I said, and it was pretty apparent. And I'm just gonna go through some stuff. There's the kind of drawing I did, and it's gonna be a little hard for me to read it.
Now you've done a lot of visionary art, and also a lot visionary contact as well.
Well, I do. People say that. I don't know. I just, I was for those who are watching, I was a 3D animator, and which was a very interesting. I was a very early 3D animator, and I actually can lay claim to colonizing cyberspace. And when nothing existed in cyberspace, I was chucking things in there, actual 3D objects that didn't exist before. And that was a very interesting way of, we'll say, piercing the veil to this new real estate of another dimension, this cyber dimension, which is kind of what my vision was about today. So that drawing there is there's a lot of talk about bodies, souls leaving the planet, but and especially in this time where people are dying. Like I just literally got off the phone with somebody who said funeral parlor is telling them that it's so overbooked that and you can draw your own conclusions to that. I also had a friend die last week. He suicided. He starved himself for a month up at a Buddhist retreat hemp farm up in Vermont. Richie, good friend of mine. But
so what do you attribute all these deaths to?
I'm very bad at. I'm not going to state that it was. I think it's apparent to a lot of people, and I prefer to look at it in a different category because there's a lot going on right now, and it is a cult. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, there's this unveiling going on, and I don't want to pick out any one thing because it actually, when you pick out one thing and you follow that narrative's in control, right? And so I don't even want to, I think the object is to do something to maintain your liberties and your freedoms, right?
Right.
That, the gibberish about what's doing that is possibly a false flag. And actually I did write something about a false flag. Just want to state that today we all know that Ratzinger died, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A rather interesting memetician, because he was the one who, if everybody remembers, did the Fatima prophecies, right?
Right.
And he took, and next to that, for some reason, I wrote Kairos and Chronos. And I wrote, and Barbara Walters died, right? Let's remember that Barbara Walters was best friends with who? Roy Cohn, who was Donald Trump's mentor.
Right.
Roy Cohn, right? And that's, neither here nor there, but it is a point worth mentioning that this kind of power structure that we had, and it boggles the mind. But and Barbara Walters, of course, died at 93 years old, right? I read, if anybody hasn't read it, the new Cormac McCarthy book, The Passenger, and Stella Maris, and I recommend them highly because, and a great line I pulled from that is, we move towards and past events successively, calling this motion time, but the event itself does not move it at all. It is always there. So I'm going to go back to my drawing. So those objects kind of hitting that globe is our Earth, and it's covered by media or mimetic structures. My vision or my communication was that those objects flying towards Earth are souls, right? And we get into this whole idea of depopulation is a big issue, right? And but is that depopulation on the death end, or is it on the birth end in a lot of ways? Are the souls, because there's a new book, The Ecology of Souls, this Kutchin guy, anybody familiar with that? That he cribbed off of Terence McKenna, The Ecology of Souls. And I actually wrote down, it's the economy of souls. It's souls are quite possibly a commercial commodity at this point in time. They've learned how to manipulate them, maybe through media. So these souls are not actually possibly being deflected from incarnation on Earth. Earth is very interesting. As I was doing this, I realized that everybody's familiar. Now I'm getting a little freaky, but Gaia, right? Remember the whole Gaia thing, which worked in with the 2012 thing on some levels. Gaia has AI built into it, right? You know, and I'm just that came to me, and I said that's kind of curious. So, you know, is the categorization entrance or exit? And what does ensoulment mean? You know what I mean? Like this idea of ensoulment. We have so much media now that's actually taking consciousness and, I would say, souls out of the body and displacing a lot of this stuff into media, right? We live in a media saturated landscape as never before. We have to remember that 20, 30 years ago, there was no internet. We'd be doing this through letters, Scott. You know what I mean? We'd be doing this through videotape 20 or 30 years ago. And one of the congressmen came out, and I just saw the headline. I was very curious about it. He said, you guys have to stop watching porn and go have sex. You know what I mean? Because people, we're being pulled into, hey, I'm glad you're laughing, but it's true, because people are being pulled into this simulacra where they no longer engage. You know, we know that. We know that that a lot of this culture now is based on staring into a screen and staring into a screen, right? And Scott, I probably
day.
Go ahead.
I said I'll take sex any day.
Yeah, but they're bleeding that out of the culture in a way. You know what I mean? Because well, look at what they're doing. They're throwing a lot of it started maybe with AIDS, right? Sex became very dangerous, right? Sex could kill you. It became very dangerous. And now you have a virus, quote unquote, that can kill you. So my God, don't go near anybody. Don't touch anybody. You know, don't think about that because you're going to get sick and die. You know what I mean? And, you know, if we haven't gathered that this has seriously damaged people, the fact that people were locked away for 2 years is so psychologically traumatizing. You know, we have to remember that, and to think that that is just going to go away, and what happened can be like washed over and said it never happened is dangerous to a human soul. Because so I just wrote that not disembodiment, but the thwarting of embodiment. Is embodiment being thwarted? You know what I mean? It's not disembodiment. Disembodiment would mean that the soul is residing in a thing. But is embodiment of the soul being thwarted through a media mimetic? I wrote down a mimetic versus genetic, right? Mimetic versus genetic. This is kind of the transhumanistic kind of idea, is that I did some work with Mondo 2000, if anybody remembers Mondo 2000, and I did a lot of work with Wired magazine from 1990 on. And we hung out with a lot of transhumanists. There was a guy I recommend, Stellark. Is anybody familiar with Stellark? Stellark was a early transhumanist. He built himself a third arm that worked off his arm, so he had a third. But he also, one of his more famous things, he grew an extra ear on his arm. And he used cartilage, built up the sculpture of an ear, and then the skin grew over it. So he had an ear on his arm. He was early, you know, this was like the new transhumanism. And I think that history, you know, in terms of the cyberpunk meme, the idea that cyberpunks were transhumanists, you know what I mean? And that was something that came around in the 90s. Actually, the 80s, William Gibson's books came out, and they were full-blown transhumanists. And were they prepping and grooming people to kind of accept this transhumanist modifications? And what do these modifications mean? I mean, this gets into the future history of what's going to go on. There is this sort of genetic, mimetic, It's not genetic, it's actually mimetic. The memes are driving people towards transhumanism. Anthony has a question maybe, or a statement?
I do. I'd like to comment if I can, because you're touching on something that I'm studying right now. I've gone back to school for neuroscience. I'm doing a lot of research in neuroplasticity. And there's a wonderful book called The Brain That Heals Itself. I recommend everybody get it. It's very easy to read. And it's very easy to understand. And they talked about something you just touched on about watching porn versus having sex. And what happens is that it stimulates two different parts of the brain. So the experiential part, the urge to experience firsthand begins to atrophy just from the visual satisfaction. Right. And I see that happening a lot. With everybody being glued to their phones and computer dating and all that other stuff, we are becoming less human. Sorry to bust in, but
no,
please. It was a brilliant
that,
point you made.
Yeah. So that goes into, again, I have a friend I've mentioned to Scott, Forsten Bray. She was very good friends with John Lilly. If you're familiar with John Lilly was the first one to put implants into the brain. And John Lilly, of course, is what they wrote Altered States about and Day of the Dolphin. And that was in the 60s and 70s. He would be on this Mondo scene.
And the Dolphins, Steve, and the Dolphins.
And the Dolphins. And actually, Forsten told me towards the end of his, how you doing, Alan? Forsten told me that towards the end of his life, Dr. Lilly, as he was known, had breast implants. And he would take them out when he saw fit. So he would get, he knew what he was doing. He was a surgeon, sort of a doctor. He would actually put and replace these things, which I talked to Scott once about the impulse for hermaphroditism or the sacred marriage or the hierogamos, which was this kind of union of man and woman, which I was thinking the other day goes back to Shekinah, right? The wisdom of God uniting with God, right? So that's early transsexualism in a lot of ways.
Lilly was a little crazy from doing too much ketamine, I have to tell you. He
Lilly, I would get invited to parties at Lilly's house where they told me he would put me in a float tank with a ketamine drip. And I said, no, thank you.
That's altered states, yes.
It's altered states. But Lilly's important because Lilly has a lot of patents on these things. And Alan, in terms of making contact, Lilly was communicating with entities and also communicating with dolphins, right? And that dolphin research has fallen a little bit to the side, and we can ask why, right? Why does some of this stuff fall off to the side? It didn't go away, it just fell out of the media and the mainstream. And is the soul of the world an egregore? Is the soul of the world an egregore? And what does it mean to be an egregore? And when they start thwarting embodiment of souls, does the Gaia, does that lose something? Are we losing something now when we're all staring into our phones? Sex being, probably one of the great acts of nature, and like we were just told, people are stopping sex to actually have relationships with their screen.
And we're losing the imaginal, Steve. The imaginal has disappeared from human consciousness.
Right. Well, yeah. There's this beating down of free thought and liberty, which is something we talked about at the beginning. Scott gave a good point. He read some Liberaz, and we read some Giordano Bruno, and this idea of liberty. Liberty is to, Tim Leary used to ask people and say, when he met them, he would say, what's your cosmology, right? What's the cosmology now? The cosmology is staring into a phone, right? Staring into a screen. That's people's cosmology. It's this media-dominated cosmology that, is probably going to come to no good, and it's the basis of control. I'm just going to go through some notes really quick. While I was going on this, I thought about the celestial clockwork. I actually have a book called The Celestial Clockwork that has a bunch of these characters in it. But that made me think of, and I was thinking about this mimetic stuff, right? Which I think is really important. Girard, there's a guy, is it Jean Girard? I'm just reading some of him. But this idea of mimetics, controlling. But we got to remember that while Dawkins was, quote, the blind watchmaker, he is also the first person to coin the term memes, right? In the Selfish Gene, right? 1989, I believe it was. So the Selfish Gene is the first one to talk about memes. We live in a mimetic miasma. You know, I always bring it up because it always works for me. Is the Yeatsian Gaias? I think that's a way to look at it: the little and the big, and it's a great diagram to understand a lot of what's going on. I'm just going to go through my notes really quick. One of the things that really I find curious is the fact of this idea of non-binary popping in, right? Like everything is non-binary now. And what is binary? Binary is the computer, right? So we have this current mimetic memes of non-binary, when binary is actually what we're holding in our hands, how we're viewing each other, the O's and ones, right? The binary code. So I find that to be a little telling. And again, it's like looking for clues. We have to look for clues here. You know, what is going on? You know, what is going on here in terms of, so transhumanism, what exactly is it? You know, and is it gone awry? And whatever happened to good old mutation? You know what I mean? Like whatever happened to good old mutation? You don't hear about mutation anymore. You hear about genetic engineering and controlled mutation, but they don't use the word mutation. Mutation has served us very well for millions of years, right? But now the control, those millions of years of functional life on Earth, is at risk of being manipulated in ways that we really don't understand. I'll probably end a little bit. I go back. I just wanted to talk about one of the things I was surprised about. I was thinking about Actaeon and the myth of Actaeon, where Actaeon sees Diana. He has desire for Diana, and Diana doesn't want to be viewed. And when Actaeon sees Diana bathing, Diana changes him into a deer, a stag, and Actaeon is devoured by his dogs, his own dogs, which are known to be his own senses, right? So we're being devoured by our own senses through this media mimetic thing, you know. And I think that circles back to where I started, which is Giordano Bruno, because he would often talk about Actaeon and in his work. And I did have a great revelation about, I'll just say I had a great revelation about memory palaces. Memory palaces are actually displacement of consciousness into other environments. You know what I mean? And that kind of borders on Giordano Bruno's memory palaces and the art of memory and things like that. It's actually a displacement of consciousness into another room. You know, if you want to remember another lecture or something, you displace your consciousness into another environment, which I thought was very interesting in terms of, again, this mimetic quagmire, which I am not presenting answers to. I am just merely bringing things up. And then I wrote down the depopulation of souls, which I think is very interesting, because if there is a depopulation movement going on, it depopulates the souls on Earth, right? And that's what's really important. And where do those souls go? And what is that economy of souls that happens that is being fucked with? And, you know, we are in dangerous waters. I look forward to hearing the rest of you speak. Thanks for listening. And thank you, Scott, for doing this. So I'll end now unless anybody wants to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Hang out, because I'd like to hear some of your comments on the presenters. Definitely appreciate that.
Thanks, Scott.
Cool. And yeah, so we have Mitchell Rabin next. Mitchell, how are you
I'm out
doing?
of breath, Scott, too, by the way.
I know. That's good. That was great, Steve. Thank you.
Aloha.
Mitchell. Yeah, now Mitchell's, unfortunately, you have a cold today, but it's great that you still showed up.
Yes.
Now Mitchell is a spiritual visionary, lives in New York City, and also the head of A Better World TV. And really, one of the, mainstay in this sort of spiritual community in New York City and the world. I mean, he's involved in a number of different ecological projects and really a great guy. Look forward to hearing what do you see in 2023, Mitchell?
Wow. Well, thanks, first of all, Scott, for putting this together and inviting me to share a few words. And it's true. I said aloha in the hope that my body and consciousness would get the message of how beautiful Hawaii is that would help to heal my cold. So that's kind of the way the mind can work. I think Anthony said he's studying neuroscience. Well, this is part of neuroplasticity, that we can use imagination in these ways that we certainly weren't taught in our growing up can be used. But in fact, the more we learn about the nature of reality, the nature of the brain, the nature of the mind, we really do see that we have this capacity. So the idea of always outsourcing power, and that goes straight across the board to our doctors and even to our holistic healers, of which I am one, and to, the body politic. We need, I feel, be very mindful of what we do with our power. And the more we marshal it, the better off we will be, because we tend to give it up really fast. And, while I was born Jewish, I was not very big on the 10 Commandments, especially the one about adultery. I wanted to petition God to have that one removed. I'm kidding. It's a bad joke.
Did he do it yet?
But there is one about idolatry. Thou shalt not hold idols. And in fact, I see that our entire culture is utterly, completely predicated and built on idolatry. And it happens in the form of, TV and film celebrities and, the whole Hollywood mystique and glamour, as we used to say that. We're talking about Esoteric, Madame, the great Blavatsky, talked about glamour, the sexy, shining star in the road, which diverts our attention from the core reality of being ourselves. And that has to do with embodying our own power and not giving it away. So that was just sorry, a little prelude, but I want to get to what you asked here, Scott, about 2023. And, in preparation for tonight, I was looking over a few different astrology charts and readings, and there's good news, folks. 2022 was considered just the bottom of so much that we went through hell, obviously in 2021 and even 22. And now we're making a pivot, a turn into an entirely different kind of reality. And I think a lot of it has to do with our taking back our power. And Scott, you were speaking about, totalitarianism and Hannah Arendt and the like. Well, we have to be on guard these days because of such powerful entities as the World Economic Forum, the Trilateral Commission, and others like this that we've been watching out for actually for decades. It's not new, but they are gaining in greater strength as they seek to dominate different political bodies and parliaments all over the world. So this isn't about instilling fear. This is about, excuse me, this is about instilling mindfulness as we watch the way, what is that famous soap opera? Because it's very much like a soap opera, as the world turns. So we want to be really mindful of the way this is all laying out. Now, I happen to be a great fan of Buckminster Fuller, and I'm going to grab, those of you who know me know that in my electronic signature, I have this wonderful quote of Bucky's, and I'm going to put it into the chat right now because it's a guiding light for me in many ways. And that's this: you can never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Now, that's a very powerful statement in a number of ways. One is it actually respects the way the mind and the brain work. They don't work with negatives and negations. They work through affirmatives. In other words, when you have something, a goal, an object to attach to go toward, that's the way the mind and the brain can work in harmony, in synchronicity, to achieve a certain goal. I mean, electromagnetic fields get generated, power and energy start to be focused in the thing that someone is looking to actualize. Whereas if you say, you know, I don't really like the way things are going right now, there's actually very little power in that. So, you know, I just want to say this. This is a very enlightened audience, and you probably really know it, but I'm really kind of nailing this down because as a culture, we tend toward critique of so much. And when we do that, while it has its usefulness and can act as guards, you know, from going down certain pathways, it's also very important to state an affirmative direction and goal for what we want. So when it comes to 2020, because that's respecting the way the mind and the brain both work. Looking at 2023, I actually think that what I'm saying has particular relevance because we have to move in this very affirmative and creative direction in order to have the world that we want, taking back our power, laughing at the powers that be. As far as I'm concerned, I think humor is one of the great tools for working around the craziness that we've been asked to accept. Before me, you know, Steve was talking a bit, and Scott about media. And so I work in media. I mean, it's one of the hats I wear with this A Better World Radio and TV since the early 90s. And I'm painfully aware of the way we are being manipulated and the way the conversation is controlled by media. And it became so evident in the whole, you know, COVID narrative that we were being plied with lies and half-truths for some people's profiteering and financial gain at the expense of the rest of us. And that kind of thing is coming out more and more. The truth of the science is coming out more and more. And this is all very good news for us. But I will say, and probably in closing, being aware of language, being aware of perception and belief system, these are, I feel, the foundational blocks for our unsticking ourselves from the lies that have been generated. And it's a way forward once we've identified how we've been lied to, so we can detach from that. And it's just across the board, as was being said. Detach from that and start, as Bucky Fuller said, basically start creating a new reality. So that's what I have to say for now. There's always more.
Well, thank you, Mitchell. That was great, and thanks for doing this despite your illness. I mean, but you look great though. So
Thank you. I
anyway,
feel like I'm
well,
getting
good.
better already because of the healing presence of, as we say in Texas, y'all.
That's great. Well, thanks, Mitchell. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
We'll chat soon.
I'm going to hang
Thanks.
out for a little bit, and
Hey,
then
Absolutely.
yeah, Scott, I
a
have
beautiful woman
some
who wants to
comments.
have sex with me.
Sure. No, absolutely. Steve, what's going on?
You
Where
know,
are
the Bucky Fuller aspect. I'm familiar with Bucky, and I was sort of a fan of Bucky too, but I've become to realize that, in my opinion, that Bucky is a kind of a New World Order shell, right? I mean, one of my big beefs with Bucky is the book
I don't know.
Utopia or Oblivion. And we got to remember again that in terms of media, back in the day when Bucky was popular, there was very few media outlets. There was Life and Time and Popular Mechanics and
Newsweek,
seven channels on TV.
Playboy.
So Bucky got an
Penthouse.
inordinate. Sorry,
I'm just having fun. I said Playboy and Penthouse, which
Bucky
actually
got
had serious articles in them.
Bucky got an inordinate amount of attention from Life magazine, right, and
Yeah.
Time magazine. Inordinate, right? While he was working, people like Wilhelm Reich were out there working who got nothing. You know what I mean? But Bucky was working in the establishment and creating this idea of utopia and oblivion. Utopia is a control mechanism. When you speak of power, I always try to not use the word power. I prefer to use the word force, because power implies some kind of ego structure involved, and I just use the word force. But Bucky, he was pushed into the media mainstream, and I have to believe it was done purposefully. Now that we're all becoming more savvy about media and how the media works, the fact that Bucky was so pushed into the mainstream means something. And I believe because he was promoting what would be a New World Order kind of agenda and utopia or oblivion, creating in people's, we'll say, minds, the meme of utopia or oblivion.
Well, listen, I know where you're
As if we
going
don't
with
have a
this.
choice in between those two.
I know where you're
extremes.
going. I know where you're going with this, and it's an interesting conversation. I have no idea. For me, it's all a matter of speculation, and that's all well and good, by the way. But it's not concrete. It would just be speculation. And Bucky Fuller is dead, so I don't know if whether he was a shill or not bears any greater relevance to this day.
I said it was only my opinion, by the way. Right?
Yeah, sure. No, I understand.
So we should be able to express our opinions because we
Oh,
want
yeah.
to learn,
Of
and
course.
we don't want power over the narrative. We're merely presenting opinions and cosmologies and some facts. And there is a fact that he got an inordinate amount of attention from Time and Life in a time where the media stream was very small. He got a lot of attention, and that needs to be examined. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Great. Cool. Yeah, so we have on next Mark Amaro Pinkham, and he is a Sedona-based mystic and head of the Order of Seven Rays and a preserver of great wisdom traditions. And I met Mark when I went to Sedona. He gave an amazing tour of the Star People tour of Sedona. And yeah, I'm really excited to see Mark's impression of 2023. And Mark has done a lot of work with the Yazidis and also, preserving a lot of the sort of traditional spiritual practices as well. How are you, Mark?
I'm great. How are you, Scott?
Very
Nice
good.
to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. So what do you think about 2023 from a spiritual perspective?
Well, for my contribution to this prophecy roundtable, I'm going to be interpreting the influence of some of the important planetary aspects we have during 2023, but also going to be bringing in predictions related to the age of Aquarius and the fifth world, whose influence will also be felt strongly in the coming year.
And I also might add, the Yazidis have also had a number of prophecies as well.
That's right. I'm going to mention some. Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So during 2023, we're going to be, in my opinion, continuing the paradigm shift that began way back on December 21st, 2012. And that's when our solar system moved into direct alignments with the center of the galaxy. And we received some very high frequency rays of transformative power, which I refer to as galactic kundalini. This energy has been stirring things up and transforming our world on both personal and societal levels ever since. And this has kind of come to a head the last few years as transiting Pluto has conjuncted NATO Pluto in the astrology birth chart of the USA. And it's caused tensions among opposing factions to rise to explosive levels. I think we all seen that and felt that. The final events of this destructive period will occur when the planet Saturn moves into Pisces this year, which is the sign associated with completing past karmas of a previous cycle and preparing for a new one. And the completion of the current devastating world karma, which will be felt especially strong in the political realm and through planetary warming. This will occur between 2023 and 2025. And then in 2026, both Saturn and Neptune both will move into the sign of Aries, which is a sign of new beginnings. So that begins a whole new cycle of time here. But the current destructive period will not be all simply doom and gloom throughout 2023. Pluto will begin its transit in 2023 through Aquarius that will signal that for the next 20 years, the political power will reside in more in the hands of the people than it has, and that the world's population will become more equal in its distribution of wealth and power, as well as more democratic and progressive in its thinking. And as this alchemy is occurring, a corresponding new paradigm will gradually emerge. Now I call it the paradigm of reunion. It'll come into focus in 2023 when Earth's population realizes that the deadly pandemics and natural disasters have occurred because of our own negligence. And then we can collectively seek a more careful course to steer the Earth and all its resident life forms. Now, this is going to lead to consciously reuniting and stewarding our four-legged brothers and sisters, as well as all life forms on Earth. Now, humans will also going to be uniting among themselves in 2023. After having identified and emphasized the differences that have separated us as a people for hundreds and thousands of years, we will now begin to identify and directly experience those characteristics and histories that connect us as one planetary family. Now, tribes and nations that separated into two or more tribes or groups eons ago will reunite, and tribes and races and nations that have lived separated for hundreds of thousands of years while believing they shared no common heritage or culture will finally find that they actually do. And they've always been brothers and sisters of each other. Now, some tribes, including the Hopis and Tibetans, who were one tribe on ancient Lemuria, have already begun this process of planetary union. The new paradigm of reunion is the fulfillment of prophecies concerning the age of Aquarius and the Native American cycle of the fifth world, both of which will begin to be felt very strongly in 2023. As most people know, we have been on the cusp of the Aquarian age since 1960s and are gradually absorbing its characteristics. As for the fifth world, it will officially commence when the final karma of the fourth world is completed, and a new cycle can then begin with a clean slate. According to Hopi prophecy, the fourth world will end under the influence of fire that will affect the entire planet. And we are witnessing that now, right now, under as planetary warming. Now, both the influence of the Age of Aquarius and the Native Americans' fifth world will, in 2023, also begin to bring us together as a one world planetary family. Now, this is essential if we are to finally experience peace and unity on Earth. And it's also a necessary next step for establishing a planetary identity, which we will need as the revolutionary scientific ideas of the Age of Aquarius filter into mass consciousness, and we begin to expand our footprint in the universe. Eventually, under the influence of the ingenious sign of Aquarius, we will acquire the technology required for both intergalactic communication and travel. So 2023 will mark the beginning of determining our cosmic identity by identifying our common star race. Now, what is that? Well, the ancient Mayans, who claim to have been descended directly from the Pleiadians, said that our sun is the 8th major star of the Pleiades, and that it revolves around the central star of the Pleiades, Alcyon, every 26,000 years. Thus, we are, and always have been, Pleiadians. That is our star race, and we are all part of and unite as one planetary people. Now, because of our intimate link with the Pleiades, missionaries from the Seven Sisters have been coming to Earth for millions of years to teach their brothers and sisters the mundane and spiritual arts and sciences. They've been the avatars. They've been Krishna, Buddha, and Jesus, who have incarnated on Earth at the end or beginning of new cycles of time. And they've been the sons of God who have mated with the daughters of men and thereby seeded many of the tribes on Earth. And that includes the Maya and the Hopi and the Tibetans, and the Lakota, Cree, Cherokee, and many, many more around the planet. Now, because of the subsequent planetary interbreeding that has occurred since that time, virtually everyone on Earth carries some Pleiadian DNA. So we are literally and technically related to each other physically. Now, according to the Hopi prophecies of the fifth world, the Pleiadians are now returning to reconnect with their star seeds, which, because of planetary interbreeding, includes all of us now. Now, they began returning in the 1970s when the sky over the Hopi reservations at night was full of starships. And as we connect with our Pleiadian roots, we will discover that one of the earliest Pleiadian missionaries that came to Earth is part of the histories of most of the ancient cultures. And these histories typically refer to him as the king of the world who governed Earth during a legendary mythical golden age. This monarch is known in the histories of the Hindus as Sanak Kamrar Kartikeya. Kartikeya is a name which means son of the Pleiades. The Sumerians knew him as Enki. The Zedis know him as the peacock angel. The Egyptians knew him as Osiris. The Greeks as Dionysus. The Jews as Melchizedek. The Hopis as Masao. The Mexican tribe as Quetzalcoatl. The Andean people of Viracocha, and on and on and on. Now, although this ancient king has many names, all worldwide, his legend remains the same because he's the same king. So this Pleiadian missionary who became the king of the world is said in these legends to have arrived with the secrets of alchemical evolution and is known in cultures worldwide as the first savior and the first teacher of the path to God. Now, in order to oversee the spiritual evolution of humanity on Earth, legends say he transmitted his spirit inside the Earth and became what's known as the planetary logos, the will and the mind of Earth. By another name, the planetary logos is simply the king of the world. Therefore, you say that this ancient king of the world in the Pleiades can be found in nearly all ancient traditions. And like the Pleiadian star race he's part of, he serves as more glue that can potentially unite all humans, all Earth humans, into one planetary family. Now, many of us involved with the mystery traditions know that that mythical king of the Golden Age never stopped governing the Earth. He's continued overseeing the events of Earth, although in recent times, he's done so predominantly from a higher dimension than our own. So his presence has virtually been invisible to most of us, well, except for the very few. Now, I first heard of him when Polyquapi, the extraterrestrial city built by the Pleiadians, whose foundations is Sedona, was revealed to me in 1987. And then about 15 years later, he began appearing to me in the Andes during shamanic rituals. And soon after that, I was guided to find his court and throne in the very center of Sedona's 50-mile diameter vortex. Some prophecies that confirm the return of the king of the world that I'm talking about now are those of the Yazidi people of northern Iraq. The Yazidi people, the Yazidis, they're a religious sect that has been decimated by Muslim terrorists for hundreds of years. And this is because they venerate the peacock angel, which is their form of the king of the world. But the terrorists have believed inaccurately and dogmatically that the peacock angel is Satan. And because of this, they believe they get points for every Yazidi they murder. But the prophecies of the Yazidi fakirs or priests maintain that the dark period of the Yazidis is nearly over. And the dawn of a new era will begin in 2025 for them. And this means that by that year, Muslim terrorists and much of the rest of the world will have to have been re-educated regarding the truth of the peacock angel. And they will have to, at that point, hold him in a completely different light. So by then, they will have become aware that he is simply the Yazidis' version of the beneficent ancient king of the world. So I see the year 2023 as a period when our past history will be resurrected, and when the existence of our ancient Pleiadian progenitors and the first king of the world will begin to return to mass consciousness. The gradual awareness of our Pleiadian progenitors and our collective Pleiadian identity will come through many people having close encounters with the Pleiadians, because they are returning, as well as through understanding the position of our solar system as part of the Pleiadian star group. It'll also come through acknowledging the existence of ancient Sedona as having been a city built by the Pleiadians that was and is the location of the court and throne of the Pleiadian king of the world. Part of the process of revealing these truths will also come about as many are now being guided to Sedona to have their mystical perceptions activated so that they can see the interdimensional city of Sedona Polyquapi. You see, only about 50% of the ancient city and court currently remain intact on the physical level. This is because Sedona has been completely submerged by water at least twice in its long history. But when the psychic eye is open, all of Polyquapi, the spectacular ancient city of the Pleiadian extraterrestrials, can be seen clearly. And I have seen it, and others are seeing it, and more are going to be seeing it in 2023, and you may be one of them. Saturn's entrance into the sign of Pisces in 2023 portends that many of us will indeed soon be able to see and live more interdimensionally. As Saturn moves through Pisces, the sign of Pisces will dissolve our Saturn-ruled crystallized realities. And and replace them with interdimensional vision. Saturn also represents the king of the world, and Pisces denotes the other dimensional realm that he exists within, that many of us will be able to enter in the coming year. And that's how my relationship first started with the king of the world in the Andes, that I was fortunate enough that he allowed me into his realm, and I've been able to see him and re-enter his realm often since. And it's been hard over the years because I have been kind of the advanced crew, seeing him and seeing the other dimensions, while other people have not. I felt it has been a bit of a lonely experience, but according to prophecy and destiny and the trances of the planets, I believe that now is a time that now many of us on a much larger scale are going to be able to see what I've been seeing for many years now. And so this is a beginning of, well, a huge cycle of time that is going to open us up to our planetary star race heritage and the truth about our past. So if you would like to know more about the past, our past and present Pleiadian heritage, as well as the Pleiadian city of Polyclopy, the king of the world, and the prophecies regarding the fifth world, you can visit my website, because I've got all kinds of information and books and so forth there, and classes that gives that kind of information. And I'm at www.sevenrayorder.com. So thank you all for listening, and have a wonderful 2023.
That was great, Mark. Yeah, and I would also recommend Mark's books. He has a number of books you can find on Amazon. Return of the Serpents of Wisdom is actually am I on? Yeah, Return of the Serpents of Wisdom is great. Conversations with the Goddess, An Initiate's Guide to the Path of the Dragon, World Gnosis, the Coming Gnostic Civilization. And also you had the Order of Seven Rays. Do you want to speak a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, that's very important right now, because we are the advanced crew, you might say, because the seven rays, the Order of the Seven Rays actually was founded by the missionaries from the Pleiades, and the seven rays represents the seven stars of the Pleiades. So by being a member of the Order of Seven Rays, you have a direct link to our brothers and sisters in the Seven Sisters, but also you have a direct link to an organization that was founded virtually millions of years ago by this master that became the king of the world, and an entourage that came with him from the Pleiades. In recent history, it's taken on another name known as the Great White Brotherhood. That might be more familiar to people. But we are working now to directly connect with the Pleiadians as they are coming into our realm, into our life, and also to connect with the Pleiadian king of the world. And so we come together to speak about what we can do in order to facilitate the agenda of the Pleiadians now, which is to give us a star identity and to bring all the people in the world together as one people. And so this is what way we're working. And you can become a member of the Order of the Seven Rays on my website, on the Seven Ray Order website, if you'd like to become part of that work that we're doing, which I think is extremely valuable and necessary right now.
Yeah, and I'll put your URL on the YouTube as well when we publish this.
All right, well, thank you, Scott.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And also, quick question: when you say the Pleiadians are returning, for the average person, what is that going to look like? In other words, will the average person know this, or do you have to have clairvoyant vision to see this?
Well, the thing of it is, Scott, we don't really know how it's going to affect the average person, because I don't see that there are average people. I see that we all have our destiny, and some of us are meant to make direct contact with Pleiadians, and some are not. And so you can't say across the board, this is how it's going to affect everybody. Like I say, we all have our destinies because we have karmic connections to the Pleiadians. So for any of us at any time, it could manifest as making some direct contact. Of course, a lot of that, the potential of that happening, you can often see in your own birth chart with your transits, or in your Vedic chart with your planetary cycles, exactly if that might be happening for you. And some of us could be directed to come here to Sedona. A lot of people all over the world are being directed to come here, and they felt for years that they were Pleiadians, and a lot of them don't even know why they're being directed here now, until I meet me and I tell them, well, this is what's happening, and this is Hopi prophecy. You're being directed here because you are Pleiadian, and you're here to make that special connection. But so it could manifest in so many different ways, Scott. It could manifest in the dreams. It could manifest you coming here and opening up your third eye and seeing, or you could have having visions of the Pleiadians. And it isn't just the Pleiadians. I said it's also the king of the world, who is a Pleiadian. And people for quite a long time have been having visions, for example, of the peacock angel. Peacocks have been coming into their circle, into their orb, into their dreams, into the live peacocks have just shown up unannounced. And people have been having visions and conscious communication with this Lord of the world, as in this form of Sanat Kamra, or in this form of Enki. Of course, he has many different forms. He's the same one king of the world, but he has many different forms. And so over many lifetimes, many of us have learned to know him as Enki, or we've come to know him as Sanat Kamra, and this is how he's going to appear to us now. So as much as connecting, as important it is to connect with the Pleiades, it's just as important to connect with this king of the world, because he's a major part of this revival that's happening now. So it could be with the Pleiadians, or it could be connecting the Pleiadians through him, through the king of the world.
And I find it interesting you mentioned that the Yazidis in 2025 will sort of be accepted, you say, in the Middle East, or they won't be persecuted anymore?
There's been a program of genocide against them, as you know.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
terrible.
Basically since the dawn of Islam. And so the only way that can recede, so to speak, is if the attackers of the Yazidis come to know the peacock angel is something other than Satan. And the only way that can happen is if there is some re-education.
Right.
And it's not only them, it's many other people in the world. They don't know a lot about Yazidis, but they hear about the peacock angel, and then they'll Google peacock angel, and they'll end up with some website that says he's the devil. So it's a matter of actually re-educating not only the Muslims and the terrorists, but people, the mass public around the world, And so in order for this program of genocide to end, there has to be this mass re-education. And I believe this is going to be happening. Certainly with my work, as you already know, I've been filmed recently. And there's a movie with me in it and my teachings and so forth, which will be going out on a rather big scale, I guess, next year. And so this is one way, but there's many ways. And of course, we in the Order of the Seven Rays, and also the Order of the Peacock Angel that I'm the head of, also are working to do that work of re-education around the planets.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Mark, and blessings and Happy New Year. Definitely.
Thank you, cousin.
Yeah, cousin. Actually, we found out we're related. I went on the wonderful trip, and anyone who goes to Sedona, you have to take Mark's Star People tour. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, you will never look at Sedona rocks the same way. It's really
Well, you
amazing.
can also
So,
learn about that in the same place, right? It's got a 7rayorder.com. Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And I put that in the chat. Well, thank you
I
very
think
much.
that I think that soon, the tools are going to get more popular because people are going to finally start accepting that this is Polyquapi. Sedona exists within the foundations of ancient Polyquapi, and the remains of Polyquapi is still here. And this is what I showed you in the tour. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. Happy New Year. Thanks.
Thank
Blessings.
you, Scott.
Okay. Bye-bye. And next
Hey,
we have
Scott,
Anthony.
can I quickly interject? Do you mind?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just as we were talking before, what we were talking about before, one of the things that's happening, and it's kind of pertinent for the next years coming up, is this push towards suicide. There's making suicide.
Like Canada.
Good side.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in Canada.
Yeah.
Trudeau's pushing
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And there's a great book called King of the World, written in 1917. It's about the Antichrist, but it also features heavily suicide chambers, publicly assisted suicide, as part of the Antichrist kind of thing. It's a really great book. It was supposedly very influential. There's a wiki on it, I believe, King of the World. It pops up. I highly recommend it. It's a very, very intense book. And also, Robert Chambers, The King in Yellow, when they talked about the suicide chambers in Washington Square Park. So, this is also about the disembodiment of souls, literally, for scrambling people's brains to like, you know what? I don't even exist in this body anymore. I exist in that other thing in the screen, or I exist on TikTok. So my body itself is not even a vessel for my soul, and I can dispose of it. So I'll just end at that. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, can I say something, Scott? I wouldn't recommend that people read that book because I have never heard any kind of conspiratorial nonsense like what Steve just said related to the King of the World. I've never heard anything like that whatsoever.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think, okay. Appreciate that, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, so I want to bring up Anthony Russell next. We were going to have Sean David Morton be on the show, and everyone knows Sean David Morton is known as America's prophet. Unfortunately, he has throat cancer, as people know. He just wrote a message that he's got done with chemo and 47 radiation treatments, which has left his neck, throat, and tongue badly burned, along with the trach tube sticking out of my neck. So for the time being, he's without the physical ability to speak. So what we asked for prayers for Sean David Morton. He was going to give a written statement, but he wasn't able to. So anyway, if everyone we could offer prayers and concerns, hopefully we'll see Sean again. I mean, he's a very entertaining speaker and also a Tibetan adept. Very, very great guy. And anyway, we, offer prayers for him. And now we have Anthony Russell, who is tarot, I would say one of the world's best tarot readers. I mean, he's written a book on the tarot. He's taught courses in the tarot. Anthony, you've been reading tarot since when? Since you were a kid?
Coming February, it'll be 55 years.
55 years.
Started when I was 16 in 1968, and I will be 71 in May. And
wow.
I put myself through college reading tarot and sitting as a medium. And if I had known I'd be doing it at this age, I would have skipped college and kept all the tuition money. But I will say that I had some wonderful careers in music and teaching and everything else. But this has been my vibe. Thank you for inviting me on, and hi everybody. Absolutely. I see a couple of familiar faces, so you know exactly what to expect. The rest of you. I
should also mention, sorry to interrupt, but you're also the owner of the Zodiac Lounge. You can see, and that was a
famous
very popular
metaphysical store and speakeasy after hours. That was a blast.
Exactly.
Actually, Corinne C-Deet has been there a few times when it was open, so she can attest to how nuts it was. I'm going to be
Yes,
brief. I
true.
think it's a New York thing, economy of words. And I'm not going to give any predictions. I mean, we can look at conventional wisdom and the patterns of what we've been experiencing over the past 8 years to see where things are going. And we can also refer to the past. Recently, there was a series on HBO, and I don't have HBO, but because I refuse to spend a dime on meaningless things, and I would be glued to the TV if I did spend all that. But it was on some regular channel, and it was about the Gilded Age, which I've always been fascinated by. I love the architecture, the fashion, the design, everything. And it occurred to me that we're actually repeating something, because in the Gilded Age, which was the end of the 19th century, there were some people who had amassed, I'll call it fuck you money, and they made some amazing things happen. It was the Industrial Revolution. We had railroads that connected everybody. And of course, our elected officials hated the fact that they had so much power. So they demonized them. And then the beginning of the 20th century was called the American century, because the American people, the Rockefellers, all those people that were so powerful during the Gilded Age had done so much to advance technology. I'm not saying they were angels. Everybody has a good side and a bad side, but it's very interesting how politics completely does what they can to destroy anyone who comes in from the outside. And then we had our first progressive movement, and it brought us a lot of the things that we're witnessing now. The Depression, Prohibition, which they better not try, yellow journalism. There was, everybody was a communist. So I'm seeing a lot of things repeat themselves, and it kind of pisses me off because, like, come on, man, do something new. What I'm seeing happening now, sorry, if I had to predict what we can expect, if I go by our media that drones on and on and on, with the same messaging that we assimilate, we're in for a terrible time. But Mitchell brought up some very important things, and we were talking about neuroscience, neuroplasticity, things like that. There's ways to not participate in this. It may have gone so far because it has been so repetitive, and I've watched people that are very bright do the stupidest things, and relationships with family members, with friends, people who don't think exactly like they think, and the way they think is the way they're told they should think. So now we're getting back into being free spirits. We're all part of a spiritual tradition because we chose to be free, to get out of the mainstream and have that freedom to think and say and feel whatever we like. I have never been a fan of conformity. Ask anyone in my family. And I don't think we need to be. What I'm seeing right now is a dissolution of personal identity. I had to go to the ER a couple of weeks ago. Fortunately, it wasn't serious, but I wouldn't have gone to the ER if I didn't think I was ready to die. And I was in enormous pain. And there was this 5-minute exchange about my gender. What is your gender? It's like, pain. My gender is pain. I'm in pain. Get me some help here. And well, I have to put this, we have to fill this out. I was like, well, I definitely have a dick. So you pick, and I'll just roll with that for the rest of my life. And she was just outraged. And I'm thinking, what have we become? I mean, you don't go to an ER unless you don't have time to wait for your doctor. You're going to go to an emergency room. Fortunately, as I said, it turned out to be something pretty serious, but not as bad as I thought it was. But all of that time going over personal pronouns and gender, and I get it. There are people who need to subscribe to that sort of thinking, but it doesn't mean that everybody must. So what I'm seeing right now is the same messaging. I cannot watch the news. What I've done now is I do doom trolling for 2 hours first thing in the morning, so I see what's going on, and then that's it. And then the next morning they've had all day to spin it, so I find out what their spin is, and then the new doom trolls start again. And it's a way of keeping my finger on the pulse of what's going on. But if you think about neuroplasticity, okay, I'll try to explain it as quickly as I can. Every time you have a thought, there's a neuron that synapses over the surface of your brain, and it makes a tiny little groove. The more you repeat that thought, the deeper the groove gets. So you automatically go to the same destination. It's very Pavlovian. In neuroplastics, the way to heal your own brain is to choose a different destination. And then I've seen it on EEGs. I've seen it during my neurons jump and create a new path. I'm sorry about that. Cat stepped on the mouse and muted me, so now it's moved. And the more we repeat that thought, the more automatic that destination becomes. It does not mean going from one extreme to the other. That's just as unhealthy. I've seen this happen with people who are experiencing depression, and they automatically believe that they're going to fail at what they do. But to become what I call morbidly optimistic is just as unhealthy. How about a 50-50 possibility that I can get out of this? That is healthy. And when you repeat that thought, it's like undoing all the damage that is done by data repetition. So our data repetition right now is we're going into a worldwide depression. Everybody who doesn't think the same way needs to be canceled. People that don't subscribe to our government issued talking points are terrorists or white supremacists. Bullshit. I've had enough of this. We can all do something. The power of the spoken word. The ancient Egyptians even said, when you say something aloud, you give it life. So we have to make a conscious commitment to not participate in this, to not be a foot soldier in anyone's army. We're blaming it on politics. We're saying it's our political parties. And if you're part of one, you're great. And if you're part of the other, you're horrible. It happens on both sides. It has nothing to do with our politicians. Even world politicians, world leaders are puppets. You want to know where the power is? Follow the money. WEF. Sorry, didn't mean to say that. Was just coughing. So if we follow the money, we can see that there is a plan. We've all heard about the Great Reset or the New World Order. This is purely an economic thing. It may happen, but to the degree that it affects us is completely up to us. Now, all of my studies in metaphysics over the years, because of my skepticism, I've gone into science. So my mission, my personal mission, is to put psychology back into parapsychology and quantum physics back into metaphysics and normal back into paranormal, for God's sake. And the way that I'm doing it is that I've begun to teach again. I have a great opportunity here in New York, and we're going to be doing everything on Zoom. It's going to be in live time. If you miss a class, that recording of the lecture will be in your student account forever. It's at, can I plug the URL, Scott? Is that okay? I bored you?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. It's at Astro West, which is 102 West 79th. It's Astro West Underground. It all has to do with esoteric knowledge. I have other experts that will also be teaching with me. The site is awunderground.com. I just put it in chat. Go there and register, because then you will get our emails for the event. We're going to be having paid events, free events, classes, series, workshops. If something isn't my jam, it doesn't mean you're not going to learn about it. I will find another expert who will teach it to you in a way that is the best way for you to learn it. For example, angels. I believe in them. I've seen them. They're just not my jam. But I do have somebody who is an expert in that field who is willing to come in. And luckily for me, over all these years that I've been reading, I have a global clientele. I know people all over the world who are qualified and willing to teach. And that is bringing us together, because we have been divided. The old divide and conquer thing is happening. And we're letting it happen, and we're buying into it. And some of us are scared into silence, and others of us have just become out and out bullies because we believe that we're on the side of the right, whether it's politically right or left, it doesn't matter. We have to approach people, we have to approach each other with compassion, with patience, and with kindness. So I also am getting caught up in this. I was getting caught up in this until about 2 months ago when I had had enough. And, you know, this is a spiritual community. We have many different traditions that are represented here. I was initiated into several of them. My very first one was in 1968. It was a Wiccan community, but it was also a Hellenic tradition. I had an amazing teacher. And I like all the hocus pocus. I like the props. I like all that stuff. And when we make a commitment, when we make a true commitment where we feel it from the tips of our toes coming through our entire body and out of our mouth, once we make that public declaration, it comes to life. especially if it is witnessed. And there are mechanics to it. There are ways to do it. This is why I'm teaching. It starts out with breath work. As you inhale in, what you're doing is you're filling yourself up and you're thinking about all the things you want to commit to. And then as you exhale, you feel the chair that you're in and you just empty your mind and only focus on that connection. And then you speak aloud and you make a commitment. And sometimes I need to dress up like the Pope and say the Mass in order to do this, depending on how vulnerable I feel. Other times I can do it on the crosstown bus. But it's such an easy thing to do. And if each of us would just really search our souls and deprogram ourselves from what we're being fed and what we're being force fed, actually, and what we're being forced to believe, and participating in our world where half of us, well, all of us, depending on which circle you're in, are afraid to speak the objective truth, okay? We're conditioned now to believe in subjective truth. I believe I'm this, so therefore that is the truth. It is my truth. No, I don't have my truth. There is the truth. I can love it or hate it, but it is still the truth. And we have to commit to that. So the best way to do it, take a deep breath, think about what you're doing, get as biblical and shit as you might want to, whatever you have to do to work up the energy to really put this out there and say it out loud and try to say it in front of a witness. If you like, I can give you an example right now. I mean, I'm ready. It's like, I am definitely going to do this and I hope it resonates with some of you, and I'm going to get crazy with it. I'm going to call all my ancestors and gods and goddesses and orishas and loas and my guides and all my ride or die hoes that have kept me on the straight and narrow my whole life, all the spiritual entities that have kept me protected and kept me true to myself. I summon and stir you up, and I ask you to witness these words that I'm about to utter and to keep me on this path. You know, Eugene, my high school friend who burnt down the gym because he put a lit cigarette under a dried mop in the janitor's closet, put the feet to my fire. My maternal grandmother, if you see me veering, give me a good hard slap and send me back to the center of the road. I need your help and I need your help. You're all witnessing me, okay? So now, tonight, this night, I make this pledge that I will scorch and salt the earth in the garden in which I grow my fucks to give, and behold, it shall become barren until the end of days, which means that I will not have a single fuck to give about any of this divisive crap that they are trying to load on us and turn against each other. And instead, I will approach my fellow man with an open heart, an open mind, compassion, patience, kindness. We need to bond together, because the one thing we do know about our warring factions right now that are trying to manipulate us is that they never clean up their own mess. So we're going to have to come together and glue the pieces back together when they're finished with their war at the end of this year. And in order to do that, we might as well come together now, so we're ready with our gorilla glue to put it back together. I will this, I command this, so be it. So mote it be, i.e. bobo, booyah, whatever I have to say to make my point, I've done it, and I expect to be held to it. It's as simple as that. It's very easy to do. Make the commitment in your heart, say it out loud, disempower the people, the strength of the movement that's been dividing us, and completely put yourself in a place of resolution that you will not participate, and instead spread solidarity. It's the only thing we can do. Because if you do believe that history is leading us in the wrong direction, we have nothing we can do about it. We can only go where history leads us. But once we get there, we do have the capacity to mitigate the toxin. So that's the end of my diatribe. I hope I wasn't too crazy.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much, Anthony. That was great. And we look forward to seeing your courses.
Oh yeah, no, they're going to be a lot of fun.
Underground.
They're going to be a lot of fun, and there's going to be many of them, and I hope to see some of you there. And yeah, I know it's a shameless plug, but it's New Year, and I've just made a commitment. I see a hand.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Do we see
Is
a
Steve
hand?
waving his hand, or is he just saying
Steve,
hi?
you want to talk, Steve?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, that was one of the things is that we were talking about before was disembodiment and stuff. And one of the things that I believe is how when you're talking about ancestors, I think that's very important. Sometimes when I feel very put upon, and we run this thing called the Medical Freedom Party. We're actually a third party, independent party. fighting the mandates, giving people their medical freedoms and their bodily freedoms, is when they, so sometimes when I'm feeling very put upon, I do call upon all the people who come before me, and I ask them to stand behind me in an army and push me forward. And we have to realize with genetic manipulation, that strand, that stream is actually being kind of severed in a lot of ways. So I just put that out there for a second. I also want to mention that, to ask you, because you said you were a practicing medium. I was just in Virginia Beach with my friend Sue Barnes from Lilydale. She has a place down there. And we were reading, and I had read in the previously, I told Sue to read Ghostland by Emma Britton. And if anybody hasn't read, Emma Britton was one of the founders of Theosophy. They all met together at a seance up in Vermont. And Emma Britton, Blotowski all met, Ledbetter met, and that's where Theosophy sort of started in Vermont, if anybody didn't know. But the book Ghostland, highly recommended, is about disembodying children to become trance mediums. And it has to do with the Orphic Circle, and also Bulwer Lytton, who I'm a huge Bulwer Lytton fan. I won't go into Bulwer Lytton right now, but I just want to plug Ghostland by Emma Britton, because we were talking about, or I was, about disembodiment and the fact of traumatizing children into trance states to have their body, to have their spirits remote view, if you want to put it that way, is an issue, and it actually is pertinent to what's happening now with trafficking and the lack of bodily autonomy that people are told by the establishment they are not allowed to have. So thank you. Sorry about speaking so long. Thank you.
That's right. And so, I'm a member of the Theosophical Lodge here in New York. I've been a fan of Blavatsky since I discovered her when I was like 10 years old at the library. And there's many different kinds of mediumship. I work as an evidentiary medium. I don't believe in letting anything come into me. You can sit right near me and you can give me evidence that I will share with the person I'm sitting for, and then they will validate it. And every time they do, it makes my skin crawl, because as I said, I'm a skeptic. But there are many different ways to do it. Trance mediumship is often confused with physical mediumship, where a spirit will enter, a spirit of a deceased person will enter the body and speak through it. Trance mediumship can be very beneficial. It has a lot to do with hands-on healing. And I'm going to be taking advanced training in that starting in February, so that I can add another modality to the services that I provide.
Have you been to Lilydale?
I have been to Lilydale.
Yeah, actually next year for the first time, my friend Sue Barnes is running a conference of physical mediums. They'll have a number of, so that's kind of interesting. And physical media, I've done physical mediumship. I'm also have done mediumship too. And
I've worked with Lisa Williams, and she's trained me in several different modalities, but she's brilliant. She's a brilliant medium, and I think she lives in Lilydale now.
She did. She did.
Yeah, but look into Ghostland, please. It's it's Emma Britton, Britten, if you're not familiar with it, because I'm always curious. I like to follow the trail back as to where these currents came from, the influences, both in politics and in metaphysical studies. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Sure. Someone was just saying that Lisa did live in Lilydale.
Yes, she did. It's Barnes. I don't have my name up.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Yeah,
Good,
we're doing a conference in Lilydale the end of June, and we're going to have 3 physical mediums working with us.
Oh, wow.
We're going to have Gary Mannion, Michael Shane, and this new physical medium, Bill Bolt, who's very exciting. So people will be able to experience that. But I also am a trance medium, and I'm a certificate holder from Arthur Findlay College.
Oh, okay.
So, and I know Lisa. Yeah, Lisa lived in Lilydale for a while there.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah, she kind of moved out because her husband's located someplace else now.
Yeah.
But she's still around.
Yeah.
She's still around.
No, she's brilliant. She did intimate that. I thought it sounded like she said she was leaving Lilydale, but she wasn't very specific about it. And why should she be? That's her personal business. But
she has her house. She still has her house there, and she still brings her school up to the Dale. To
Great
do
house. Yeah.
Lilydale is like the Peyton place of mediums, if nobody's not familiar with it. It's a lot of mediums running around doing great work, but also interpersonal stuff. It's very, very interesting. But the conference next year does sound very, very intriguing. So thank you, Sue, for doing that. And I'll see you up there. Thank you.
And thank you all again. for putting up
Yeah,
with my
thank you,
mouth.
Anthony.
Sure.
And also, I should mention that Steve was a candidate for Congress last year
Oh, wow.
for the
Okay.
Medical Freedom Party.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 10th district. We're going to be running 51 city council people. This time we ran 8 candidates as medical freedom, 2 Congress, 4 state Senate, and 2 Assembly. We did very well. We were on the ballot in New York City, and we're fighting for our medical rights, which also mean our spiritual rights. You know what I mean? If we don't have control
our
over our
rights,
bodies, what?
Our constitutional rights, period, our
And
rights to everything.
thank you very much. Yes. So if
Yeah.
anybody's interested, it's we meet every Sunday at 122 East 83rd Street, MFA, the Medical Freedom Alliance, mfa.ny.org, and mfany.org. It's 122 East 83rd Street. But we've been meeting for 2 years straight, and the Medical Freedom Party is an outgrowth of that. And and I will say that the MFA is a very spiritual-minded group. There are lots of Rudolf Steiner people there. Everybody's there. So it's interesting to see the intersection now that people are becoming aware that we have to get a little bit involved in politics to maintain our rights.
Even if it's only supporting somebody, but run for office if you can. Become a staffer. Now it's interesting. I live in the West 80s. So you say you meet every Tuesday?
Yeah, East 80s. Every Sunday.
Every
122
Sunday. Okay.
East 83rd Street.
Right.
And I'd like to know more about your classes, so I will be in touch with you through Scott. If you don't mind, Scott can give me a number.
Excellent.
Right?
That would be fine. That would be great.
Thank you. And
okay,
thanks.
Thank you.
We'll move on. Thanks, Scott.
And of course, Steve's motto is politics is the new occultism. We can talk about that later, though. That's good. Yeah, we will mention that. So, well, thanks, Steve. And we will next speaker is Asa Hershoff Lamajimper. Sorry for waiting so long, and we're having a really good number of conversations.
To listen to people.
Yeah, and Lama Jimpa, he's an ordained white robe tantric practitioner. He spent 3 years and 3 months in a meditation retreat. And you're also a healer. You've written a number of books, including Homeopathy for Musculoskeletal Healing, Homeopathic Remedies, Herbal Remedies, and 100,000 Rays of the Sun, Biography of Lama Tsering Wangdu. So yeah, we did a lecture, an interview. Unfortunately, the quality wasn't that good. We were both in foreign countries, but we did it on the role of the demonic or demons in illness and healing. And hopefully we're going to redo that interview because I thought it was quite fascinating. But anyway, Asa, what do you see for 2023 from a spiritual point of view?
Yeah, probably maybe refreshingly, my perspective is quite different from the folks we've listened to, which are all wonderful and fascinating and so on. But, Bob Dylan's statement, or in his song, "You don't need a weatherman to tell which way the wind blows," is quite telling, because to see our future for this year, we just have to look at the past trajectory. There's no, though we may see some deviance from that, if we look at what's happened in the last few years, it's moving forward quite rapidly. We have 80% of the planet has been vaccinated. So they have, basically we have people who are producing toxic proteins in their body ad infinitum. We don't know to what degree, because there's many different batches and many different situations and different manufacture, and there's no standardization. But we already see in some places, as we know through actuarial tables and so on, a 40% increase in mortality, all-cause mortality, and so on. So we don't know the impact that's going to have overall, but it's unlike anything that's ever happened on this planet. I've been treating people for 45 years as naturopath chiropractor, but this is pretty unprecedented. And when the body is not actually designed to produce toxic proteins ad infinitum in every tissue. So we don't know where that's going to go. And as we do know, the Great Reset, that is proceeding rapidly with the psychopathic global corp beings who want nothing else but to control the entire population of the world. That's moving along. We've got some fireworks going on. And I just came back from 5 different countries in Asia. And for example, in Japan and Thailand, and especially Japan, 100% of people are wearing masks, even though the government said you don't need to wear masks anymore. And imagine the generation of children that have grown up without seeing facial. It reminded me of Android. There's some nice shows on TV. What's that one called? Not Westworld. Yeah, the same creators of Westworld. I forget what it's called. But imagine children that grow up without facial expression, without seeing. They see it at home, of course, but without having that important neurological education going on of facial expression, emotional communication, and so on. So we're obviously in terrible trouble. And I always like to tell patients who ask me anything about it, say it's funny that within the natural world, within biology, there's no insect, reptile, bird, mammal, primate that over billion years of evolution developed a flap of skin with holes in it to protect them from germs. No mask was developed in nature. In fact, we have this incredible, complex and sophisticated turbinates and Waldeyer's ring, lymphatic tissue, and all kinds of chemical and physical barriers, immune functions, and so on, beautifully designed. So we somehow didn't develop a flap that allows us to rebreathe our own air. And I think it's 75% of all toxins in the body are excreted via our exhalations, not via our skin, kidneys, or colon, but via our exhalation. So rebreathing all that in is pretty phenomenal. I was actually trying to do some research and finding out what is in our in-breath, our out-breath rather, that we're breathing in. But, there's petrochemicals and, of course, viruses and fungi and everything imaginable. Every kind of toxin is supposed to be going out your breath. Anyway, so there we are. We have that trajectory that's going on, and that's as a doctor, I already see that in my office. That we see the damaging effects of that. We see the chronic conditions that are going on, and it's tough to watch. Among those that are the so-called pure bloods, then it's a different situation. But I think for me, the most startling things, I've said this for a number of years, that we're heading into if we named our era, I call it the age of charlatanism, the age of the charlatan. What is a charlatan? We see that not just on a spiritual level, but politicians, recording artists, talking heads on television, celebrities, whatever it is. Charlatan means basically that you really don't know what you're talking about, or you're not talking from your core, from your essence, from yourself, but you do believe, or you're making everybody else believe that you know what the heck you're talking about. So we do live in an age of this kind of phenomenal deception. I always say, stop for a moment and think that there is a $1 trillion profession, a $1 trillion industry called the advertising industry that has no reason to exist except to deceive you into purchasing something. Yes, maybe in the old days they made some comparisons between this object and that object, but then with Bernays and his ilk, the nephew of Freud, Edward Bernays, who really invented modern mind control as we see it today, apart from CIA or whoever other, but he taught governments and he taught the industry how to work with our Freudian mind and to control people's outputs and control their inputs. And so this profession and this industry is only involved with manipulating us. So we become so used to lying. I remember reading somewhere how many lies we are told a day, especially if we watch television or watch advertisements, etc. But you can watch any media, and you can look on Facebook, and you're getting people's false information. And so it becomes quite difficult for the average person, impossible, I would even say, to have discriminating wisdom, to be able to discriminate what is true and what is not true. And that is the crucial factor, is can you tell shit from shinola, I think they say in New York. Can you determine if And it's very difficult. I don't know how many times I've been duped by people who appear honest or who appear spiritual, etc. And sometimes it can take years, as we know. Well, people know through their marriages, and sometimes it can take 1 or 2 years to find out, that the person that they projected to me and that I accepted because of my lack of insight, they're not that same person who I thought they were. That's a common statement you hear. Yes, not only because you were not perceptive, but they went to great lengths to express a persona, a mask, rather than demonstrating their essence or making that available. So it's very easy to be fooled, and and this idea also was mentioned about the worship of celebrity and the worship of superficiality. It's quite problematical. The worship of status really makes the world go round. And so does, as you know, Scott, I'm very much involved with what I call the 5-element elemental psychology and elemental healing. In that system, we have something called power, which is your innate essence, to steal a term from Gurdjieff, your inherent capabilities and capacities and goodness, basic goodness, as Trungpa said. And then we have loss, which is a disconnect from that. And then shadow, which is a false power, a way of gaining power by manipulation or by negative means. And so we have a world that is run on loss and shadow. And again, the advertising industry is very, very good at exporting that, of making people feel they are deficient in various ways. And they're going to sell you the shadow answer to that, whether it's purchasing something or believing a particular idea, or following a political creed, joining various cults and so on. So that therefore we see the saddest thing of all this, not just that people have received a toxin within their body, but the phenomenal acceptance of deceptive information on a global scale, and the lack of personal research or investigation or the capability to not conform and to follow one's own distant drummer. So that has been sad. I've always said that 90% of the world is insane, but it's never been so vividly expressed. So that's not a cheering thought. That's not we almost need, and we might have, some kind of divine intervention to stop human beings from careening towards the edge of destruction, which we're witnessing now, ecologically and financially and so on. We're definitely on a critical mass. But of course, on an individual level, that's just the environment, the background from which we experience. It's just like travel. People say, how was that city? How's Japan? How's Thailand? How's Bali? And so on. Well, it's just a backdrop for your own internal processing. Otherwise, you can just read a travel directory and read a book, and you'll find out about the place. So this planet, this world, this realm is a place where we continually test our mettle. In the Buddhist approach, I think the Hindus have the same concept. They talk about 6 different realms, from hell realms, hungry ghost realms, animal realms, human realms, demigods realm, God's realm. It's very interesting that the human realm sits in the middle. So it's either the top of the lower realms or the bottom of the upper realms. So we're kind of in the middle. This is where a dividing of the ways is. We can go up or down, and people do. We can watch people even in their own lives. They go into deeper understanding, deeper compassion, more gentle, more generous, more loving, more understanding, and stronger. Or they go the other way, become progressively weaker, progressively more depressed, anger, more into loss and shadow. So that's really what's going on. I don't, in terms of the future, again, being a Buddhist, I'm very much pickled in that for the last 45 years, and that influences my way of thinking. But I am reminded of sitting with Kalu Rinpoche in Darjeeling, or just outside of Darjeeling, a place called Sonada, where he had his monastery. One of the great meditation masters of old Tibet, of the first generation that left Tibet, and he one of the top fellows. And at that time was already old. And it was during maybe it was the Cuban Missile Crisis, 1980, whatever was going on there, that we thought the world was going to end. There's going to be a nuclear holocaust. And one teary-eyed student said, what's going to happen if they blow up the world? It's going to come to an end. He says, well, don't worry. You'll find another samsara. You'll find another illusory world or phenomenal world realm to live in, and you'll keep working out your karma. So basically, our own journey is we're intimately involved with this world. We have obviously have a karmic connection with everybody on this planet, the same as we have a more close karmic connection with the city that we live in, and karmic connection with the people that we meet, and in finer divisions. But basically, our own journey is going to be solo ultimately. We have to work with ourselves and work with our material, try to help others as much as we can. That's what my life has been devoted to. They call it the two goals in Tibetan Buddhism, self and other. So you're trying to have full realization yourself and continually help others along the way. And there's really nothing else you can do. But to me, this particular globe, this particular world, it don't look good. I don't see the human race really surviving as we've known it, with the deterioration of culture and society that's going on now. It's unprecedented, as we all know. The destruction of all the values that we know as truths, everything from gender to you name it. So this is all self-apparent to us all. So I'm certainly not optimistic about the fate of the world. And again, traveling and probably seeing, maybe I saw 1 million people, because Japan, you can just stand in the subway there and you can see 200,000 people in a day. And Thailand is very crowded, etc. Nepal, you see a lot of people. And I would say, with few exceptions, most people are quite asleep. They're the Walking Dead, So the awareness that we might be able to bring and share here is not the norm in this world. People are concerned with they have very petty concern, very shallow concerns. They ain't jumping into a 3-year retreat, and they ain't jumping on this phone call either. So most of the world is quite asleep to their spiritual potential, or even their psychological potential. They're trying to be happy, trying to make a living, trying to take care of their family, and often there's ruthless aspects to that too. You can get ripped off in a lot of different ways in a lot of places, including in North America. So we have to deal with a lot in our lives, as we know, and we have to be very cautious of the packs of wolves that are around, the regular folks that are overcharging you, or of course the corporations, the phone companies, whoever it is that is gouging us. 24% on your credit card when the interest rate was still when it was 1%, still you're charged 17 or 24%. So it's a tough place that we're living in, but it is a proving ground for our own spiritual development. And so I applaud anyone who is treading this path and who is trying to help others, even though it may be a drop in the bucket. Again, I don't hold out for the state of this entire world, but I'm very happy to help a few individuals, and I know our karma will complete somewhere down the road. I'm very, very interested, because of Tibetan Buddhism. I'm very interested and have studied a lot of material and practiced a lot of material around light body. And so I have, and because of my own work, studying with a psychic healer over a 13-year period, and then practicing for 40 years with energy sensitivity, let's call it, or biosensitivity. I have a theory that if you have developed, because light body is not something that happens instantly. It's not, first I have a cellular body, now I have a light body. So there's a whole period of development during our life. And I do believe, my pet theory is, if you have achieved 30% luminosity, then there's a possibility that you will reincarnate and continue. Because I'm a follower of Gurdjieff's concept or dictum that if nothing has developed, if you're, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, the average person, if they do not develop a vehicle to carry on past this life, then they'll just be recycled. And J.G. Bennett called it the soul stuff pool. Like your soul will go back, what belongs to the sun will go to the sun, what belongs to the moon, to the earth, and your soul material will be recycled, etc. So to become a so-called stream winner in Buddhism, to achieve a state in which you can carry on your evolution is already a great possibility. Because as we know, I don't know, I've been fortunate to meet some who I consider illuminated people, enlightened beings, but there's not a lot. I mean, this is an extremely rare situation. Even going to Nepal, meeting as many ordained people or monks or not, whatever their status might be, very few have reached high levels of realization. I can count on two hands. I've been very fortunate because of, spending my whole life doing this. I can count on actually two hands the number of what I consider fully realized beings. I don't know if they're a Buddha or a Jesus, but they're way up there. So my personal goal, if I can help others reach that threshold where they can carry on with their spiritual practice beyond this one life, because I don't see how you can do it in one life. If you did do it in this one life, it's because you had 50 or 100 other lives where you were very fortunate and working very, very hard. And in fact, when I first had met Kala Rinpoche, I had already been in practice and I already had developed, I wasn't born that way that I know of, but I had developed my ability to feel energies, to have a psychic communion with individuals, know what's going on in their body and in their psyche and where their blocks were, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked him about that. And I said, I read somewhere that if you use this, it'll, if you use your cities or your spiritual gifts, they'll use them up and it's a bad thing. He says, no, if you're using that to help people, have at it. You can use that gift. So that's the way I've approached that. In any way that I can help people to develop and further my own development, then that's where I'm at. So that's my only prediction, or my only, you could say, advice to the broader world, is just continue to help others and to forge ahead on your own path, and to watch out for the fakes and phonies, because they're everywhere on all levels, not just on the spiritual level, but there's deception. And I think 2023 will continue with an accelerated level of deception, especially as people have noted, more truths will come out. And because of that, there'll be more resistance and more lies in order to cover up some of these dastardly events that have transpired, have been perpetrated upon the human race. So that's it really for me.
Oh, thank you very much. That was
thanks for listening to the doom and gloom.
No, it was a lot of wisdom. Quick question. For those of us who did have to get vaccinated, what do we do medically?
Actually, there's quite a bit of information. It's freely available on the internet. And again, that's the staggering thing. That kind of information, I have some photos of me the very first week that we heard about this pandemic. And I've got a trench coat on, rubber gloves, a mask, a hat. And that lasted, I think, about 4 days. And by then, some information started to come out. And I said, wait a minute, this is a bit flaky. And now, of course, just it's an inconceivable avalanche of information about the toxicity and about the possible rectifications. There's whole books written, and there's resources of, the 12 top misinformation spreaders like Dr. Mercola and so on. There's a lot of wonderful information, free information on how to combat the various levels of toxicity. And of course, it varies from person to person. And COVID itself, being a biowarfare agent in the first place, has some very long-standing. I had it twice, and I'm vaccinated. I still had it twice, and there are some long-term consequences I'm still working with. I still have to deal with that. It's a very toxic phenomenon. So yeah, that is readily available. And another thing I didn't mention was on my sheet there, and you did allude to it, the uptake, because the countries that I visited now, I've spent probably half my life in Asia, so I spent half the year traveling there in Buddhist countries mainly. But I would say the uptick in demonic energy is phenomenal. In fact, when this pandemic first happened, I put a little blog out and say, yeah, this is my perception was there was a black and a red, a fire iron dragon that was awakened in the East, arising particularly because of all the hatred that had been spewed over the last few years, awoke up this dragon. And I remember when it landed in LA, I could feel this cloud settle here as well. So there's no question that for me, having been very involved with Tibetan Buddhism and practice of Cho, which deals directly with demonic forces or interdimensional entities, that there's a tremendous uptick in demonic activity. And people who are holders of the light can certainly expect to be under attack. That happens. You know, if the better the work is that you're doing, the more you're liable to be targeted, you're liable to be noticed by these kinds of forces. So all the more reason to gird your loins and have a great spiritual strength and align yourself with powerful spiritual forces that can come to your aid. We can't do it ourselves, for sure. I have my little buddies here, and I really rely on my pantheon of Tibetan helpers and meditations to protect myself, because it's nasty out there, and each country has their own little nasty folks. So you go from country to country, you're getting it's like a different microbiology. You know, you're getting different types of organisms, bacteria, viruses, molds. And you're also getting different non-human entities showing up, and they're just as much pathogens as microbes, or just another life form. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Steve. You had a question. Let me pin you. There you go.
A quick observation, just great. Yeah, I agree. I'm a Gurdjieff guy too for a long time. I'm actually shocked that a Gurdjieff person who studied Gurdjieff would get vaccinated, but I understand that there are things going on.
I didn't get vaccinated, so don't blame me.
No, I know. I'm not blaming. I don't blame anybody. I honestly don't blame anybody. I understand just what's going on. It's a pretty rough situation.
Yeah.
But I also you mentioned Bernays, and I always like to, if people are interested in people like Bernays. Bernays was married to Margaret Mead, I believe. Bernays also worked with Norbert Wiener, the father of cybernetics, and they ran things called the Macy conferences in 1947. From 1947, and that was the beginning of social engineering. And we have to also, those words should be spoken at this, social engineering, what's going on. Norbert Wiener had a come to Jesus moment. He was working at MIT. He when he realized what his work in cybernetics was becoming, he started studying Kabbalah and dropped out of it a little bit, but it's not really public. I've spoken to people who know. He wrote God and Golem and the Human Use of Human Beings, and also the books on cybernetics. And looking into the Macy conferences and Norbert Wiener is a kind of important thing to understand how we got here today. So thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you very much. You're an encyclopedia of information.
Well, thank you very much, Asa. And if someone wants to work with you and study with you, what's the best way to make contact?
Yeah, they can go to one of my many websites, the5wisdoms.com or the 5waysofpower.com. I can put it in the chat.
Sure, that'll be great.
My main approach, based on Tibet, not only just Tibetan Buddhism, but cross-cultural investigation of this ancient piece of wisdom of these five elemental forces that maintain the world, our bodies, our minds, and our spirit. That's the focus of my training, because I find it's the most accessible and accurate and immediate way to start transforming our body and mind is through the five elements. It's a basic building block you can work with.
Great. You said you're coming out with a new course on that?
Yeah, I've got courses and books coming out this year. Some of these books I've been writing literally for 20 years, my own karmic obstacles to get them out there. But this year it is happening. So they'll soon be around. Five elemental psychology and five elemental energy healing, etc. So I'll put a link to that stuff.
Excellent. Look forward to reading them. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Blessings and Happy New Year.
Yeah.
And Roland, are you there? Where are you? There you are. How's it
Yeah,
going?
I'm here.
Yeah, so Roland is a longtime friend, and he's the a spiritual practitioner for many years. We knew each other from God, when was that?
Michael
Michael
Lewis teaching,
Michael Lewis's
all of
teachings and all that.
Ron Zhang. Yes.
Right, and he's the owner of Media Dreams Productions, and also works for Gary Null. So it does a lot, and all your work is really based on spiritual awareness and also peace. You've done a number of films on peace, enemies of peace, and all that. So yeah, so we're interested to see what you see in 2023 and any suggestions you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much in the way of predictions, but first, yeah, I want to thank you, Scott, and for putting this together, and all these fascinating people with wonderful and really, cutting edge sort of information, and yeah, it's really great to participate in this. But for myself, I work in media primarily, and I've worked, both on sort of the corporate broadcast end, and sort of progressive independent media as well. So, what I'm seeing now, of course, we all know it's kind of very interesting and possibly dangerous times, but also, sort of moving towards a rebirth. That's something that I feel. There's a lot of people waking up, and that's kind of the saving hope. We know the last decade has been sort of an unfolding of, as some people say, unfolding of the apocalypse, or lifting of the veil. So we're seeing, a lot of the facade just sort of, peeling away, and we're seeing, things for what they really are. So that's encouraging as well. We know there's a sort of a power grab going on, and the propagandists are going, like, at hyper speed, trying to get a handle on things, getting desperate with, of course, it's even getting even more thinly veiled, the propaganda, because they seem to not care anymore. They're just putting it out, and they know people are accepting it. So, of course, the government, the WEF, the World Economic Forum stuff, the
If I could
medical
just
authorities.
if I could just interject, I mean, you have a good point there. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm a
Yeah,
journalist. I went to journalism school,
yeah,
Boston University, and there's no journalism anymore. It's advocacy,
right.
which is a sense of propaganda. We're always taught to be objective, left, right. You just look for the truth, but now it's everyone's an advocate.
Yeah.
CNN, I can predict how they're
Hmm.
going to spin a story, you know,
Right.
and so anyway, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I thought that was a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I mean that's so true. And we're just seeing all of this stuff come to light now. And now people are really starting to pick up on, especially all the attempts by the medical authorities, and pushing health passports. And that's what, we really have to fight against that, because that's a dangerous threshold to go across, where people would have to produce papers and digital IDs and all this kind of stuff. But so what I think it's really important for people to focus more and get more information from independent media. I mean, we've seen from the recent Twitter files, how manipulative, even and especially social media has been, and that's not just Twitter; that's all of them. They're doing the same thing. So I've been trying to work more and get more information from people like Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, even Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore, and even Joe Rogan have been putting out like real, just truthful information, just simple, what media and reporting and journalism used to be. It's just, so they're exposing a lot of the real misinformation, especially the war profiteers and war promoters. And so we see the medical industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industry, it basically created a COVID industry and a perpetual war industry, and they're just making billions of dollars and don't seem to care about what happens to people. So, the propaganda has been trusting, science, which has never been something that you trust. You challenge it. You try to find what's at fault and what's a better path. So that's why I applaud the Medical Freedom Party. I think that's something that we really need, and we need more truth-based media. So that's what I try to participate in as much as I can. I mean, just yesterday I recorded an interview with Robert Malone, and he's been on this and has suffered a lot. People have had their careers destroyed because of this. And these are some of the leading scientists, doctors like Peter McCulloch, Paul Marek. These are all people who have interviewed and helped to interview for upcoming productions and documentaries. So this is where we're at right now. It's kind of a battle going on for truth, truth in real, scientific information. So that's why the technology was so important for some of these powers to get their handle on, because the media and technology is basically making us lose our connection with nature and the earth. It's all focused in. We're on screens, most of our waking hours now. And so I try to think more along the lines, especially for the new year, of refocusing on living in cooperation with nature, living, more closer to nature, being, grounded and connected. And, as a practitioner of Qigong and Tai Chi, that's something that, is vital. When I can get to just a deserted beach or a place somewhere where there's nothing around, that makes, such a difference. It's tremendous. So, I'm seeing there are new models and goals that we need to be moving towards that are more sustainable, cooperative, peaceful. So, basically evolution of us, instead of, the path that they're trying to steer us towards, which is more genetic and social engineering and, manipulation is what it is, because we're seeing with the environmental degradation that we're going to be seeing food and water security issues that we already are seeing, but it's going to be more widespread, most likely an economic downturn. And, the poor of the world are the ones who suffer the most, the people who have the least. So, I see sustainable, smaller communities of people, smaller towns is kind of a way to go. And I'm looking, I think, to get out of New York City soon, even though that's so much that I love. But, for me, just to wind it up here, just want to keep it brief. I'm just trying to create more media that informs and inspires people, and creating more music, and staying, more devoted to my practices. And that's what we all have to do, I guess, on an individual level. And keeping community, I think, is so important. Keeping community lines of communication open, and awareness, and things like this, where people are able to share such amazing ideas, and just it's very inspiring. So thank you again, Scott, for putting this together, and thank you everyone for all your input. It's been just fascinating and really great to hear. It's inspiring.
I appreciate it, Roland. You good media on find information. I think sometimes you have to go mainstream. Even NPR lately has been compromised. I was reading something, I guess, looking at the former head of NPR to
they're all in intelligence, right? They're in intelligence or pharmaceutical companies, and they're just embedded in all the media now.
So yeah, that's great. But I appreciate it, and happy new, and keep up the good work. Definitely.
Yes. Let's get together soon.
Absolutely.
In person.
Okay, take care. Well, take care. Ellen, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, Scott. Yes, I'm here. All right. Let me.
There you are.
Okay. Hey.
Sounds like you're at a rave.
I'm in Playa del Carmen, which is crazy for New
Okay.
Year's, but let me just. You want me to? I actually caught some of the show, but am I the last one up? No.
Yeah, then Jillian is going to be on after you, and then Lady
So-
Rhea.
Lady Rhea. No,
Call back later.
No. I don't think I have that much to share, except for the fact that I think disclosure in 2023 is really going to be one of the major features of the year, because the Congress just signed a bill called the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act 2023, which allowed for whistleblowers, people who were previously held under an NDA about the UFO situation, and allowed them to come forward without violation or persecution of their NDA. And there's a whole bunch of people lining up, according to Chris Mellon, that will talk about the last 75 years of UFO cover-up. And this is something that the comptroller, you know who the general comptroller is? He's a nonpartisan appointee that's there to carry out the laws of the congressional bills. So the comptroller, according to this is John Ramirez's work, says that when people come forward, they cannot be prosecuted because they are violating this NDA. And that's in this National Defense Authorization Act that was just signed by Congress and will go into effect next year. And besides that, there's some new internal government offices. I think one is called Arrow. They're incorporating the advanced aerospace and underwater, I guess, investigations. And also they mentioned in some of these acts a sort of interdimensional possibility for these UFOs. I mean, they originally changed the name to UAP because they're no longer about objects. This is a phenomena is affecting human neurology, physiology. So the Congress is standing up or supporting this next level of disclosure. And people like Lou Elizondo feel free. He feels freed up to now be allowed to come forward. This is how I interpret it, and talk about what he knows, because he's always said whatever's out there is not, it's not ours, not the US, it's not Chinese, it's not Russian, it's not some rogue government. There's something else from somewhere else that's in our skies. And finally, the Congress hopefully wants to know the truth, or at least some people do. So I think we're going to have a lot of disclosure fireworks in 2023. At least that's what people are hoping. And I think the whole dimension, vibration of this reality is shifting. So I think a lot of things are going to change. I think the last 2 years have been a real cleaning out, a real purging. And now we're going into some new realities, I'd like to say. So look out for those new realities. I'm also planning a couple of trips this year. We're doing a great tour to Egypt with JJ Hertog in September. And I think that's going to be tuned to the new vibration that is now coming to the planet. So even though those temples are thousands of years old, I think there's a reactivation of those ancient sites because the vibration is now, it's like a snake biting its tail. It's the Ouroboros. We're returning from where we came, and with that moment of a greater awakening. At least some people anyway. Of course, there's a lot of people who don't pay any attention to this, but there is that cutting edge that is saying that we will be doing that.
Forward to you. I hope see you. Do you want to put in well in the YouTube video? I'll put a link to that trip. I think it's going to be amazing. JJ Hertog, yourself, Neil Gower from
Geraldine Orozco. Yeah. There's a lot of people.
Joan of Angels. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a really great tour to some really great sites there. And I'm also doing something in San Diego with Portal to Ascension. I'm going to be at the Conscious Life Expo in February. The Sedona Ascension retreats. There's a busy year for activation. I'm trying to make the tour to see as much of that as I can, because we are at a threshold of a huge change. And we thought we were going to change like the last 2 years. I remember in 2020, I talked to you early when William Stickevers said,
Yep.
at the Open Center event, that was said,
there.
Get ready for a Black Swan event. That's something that changes history. And he was right. I don't think he knew what he was talking about, but he was predict the general mood that something would come. So that cleaned us out. Now we're ready for the unknown, which includes UFOs, UAPs, and interdimensional travel and higher consciousness and a vibrational shift. I'm doing a prediction show with 4 astrologers on January 5th on my YouTube channel. So tune into that. And now some people are waiting for me for dinner. So, but great job, Scott. I didn't go live on my channel because I checked. So we'll get the replay or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get the replay. Yeah. And I'm going to
Take it easy, Alan.
Hey, good to see you in your bathtub, Steve.
I'm not in my bathtub.
Maybe we'll see you in Egypt. Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, that would be
Send
great.
you the link. Anyway, thanks, Scott. We're going to see Scott in Egypt.
Okay,
for
thank you
sure.
very much, Alan.
All right. Talk to you
Okay.
soon.
Take care. Happy
Hey,
New
Scott,
Year.
Scott, really
Bye-bye.
quick.
New Year, everybody.
All right.
What's that?
No. Scott, really quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to bring up the fact that, and a bunch of people are talking about other people. Alan, you should mute. And, we have to remember there's the esoteric and the exoteric, right? And what is the responsibility of the esoteric to the exoteric? And let's remember that esoteric is an emerging categorization. The esoteric changes. What you thought was esoteric 10 years ago is no longer esoteric this year. So the esoteric and the exoteric are emergent. And, I'm curious if anybody cares to speak about what is the responsibility of, let's say, the esoteric community to the exoteric community. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, I think that's interesting because I did some recorded interviews with Mark and then Craig Williams speak about that. Particularly Mark Stavers, what of a person should be. His point was you need to get involved, but also as you increase your own consciousness, you're going to affect the consciousness of the whole. So what do you think of that, Steve? What you were talking about?
Well, that's interesting. The concept of the egregores, and I think when you say Stavish, I think he did an egregore book. If I get this right. Right. So the egregore, and that's what I was actually bringing up before about Gaia as an egregore versus AI as an egregore. So it's an interesting. And Scott, you get a little garbled, so your connection might not be the greatest. Just so you know.
Oh, really? Weird.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate it. 5, we have John Vernian. Let me see, John, you there? There you are.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, let me pin you 1 second. Where are you?
Cool.
There you are. Yeah, and John, I've known him through my Sufic studies, and you were, a student in Sufism, and you've also quite an accomplished occultist. You've written a number of really amazing books: Zachiel, The Stargate of Christ, Asaya Kalaksa, and Zeta Malik. You've done some really groundbreaking work in occultism.
That Zeta Malik will come out probably realistically probably at the end of next year.
Yeah, coming summer 2023. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in your insights into 2023. You've had a number of different contacts, inner contacts, particularly as you said with the jinn, and actually Nineveh Shadrach talks about the jinn, and on the YouTube I'm going to edit it in, but he talks a lot about sort of the influence of the jinn on world events. Politics, that type of thing. So
Well,
it'd
I
be
mean,
interesting to see what you say. So anyway,
yeah. Well,
turn it
I
over to you now.
actually I agree a lot with what Alan was saying. I do believe that this 2023 is the year of disclosure. I've been pretty awake to that reality of the extraterrestrials and alien contact since I was just a kid. So I think now is definitely the time that those things are going to be start coming out even more. Somebody that's an experiencer and somebody that's been involved within it for so long. It's kind of like old news in a sense, but more and more people on the surface are starting to wake up to that kind of reality. So I think people are going to be forced. When I mean people, I mean like government officials and certain people that are in higher up positions are going to be kind of forced to come out with some form of information, whether it's 100% disclosure or not, to at least pinpoint to unearthly or other dimensional worlds that are influencing ours. And that's where actually a lot of my work comes from, having that kind of contact and writing the books that I've written. It's only due time. So I do feel that 2023 is going to be that. But unfortunately, with good things, it's going to get much worse. You know what I mean? The battle between certain factions are going to get much worse, and you're going to have people that don't want to let that stronghold be relieved, if you will. You know what I mean? So there's going to be a lot of infighting. We're still going to see a lot of programming and mind control because people don't want to release that. When you have such a strong grip on reality and people's consciousness, why do you want to get rid of that? So the war will continue, but it's going to teeter more into what I'm thinking is like disclosure. And a lot more people are looking for new modalities of self-help, psychological awareness, spiritual awareness. I see it grow every single day. Everybody's looking for new things, whether it be your bottom barrel Wicca or where they come and take my classes and they're diving into extreme interdimensional gateways. It's not everybody's super advanced, you know what I mean? So it's answering what Steve was talking about. What can we do on the esoteric and the exoteric? Is to realize that everybody is at their own spot in the waking process. I actually see 18 and 19-year-olds that I'll talk to that are way more advanced than most people that have been there their whole life. So we see different ends of the spectrums, and all we can do is, if we're very into the esoteric and very awake, if you will, is understand that not everybody might be where we are, and be those kind of helping hands and those light showers in the light way, to kind of show them that path. But I see more people being receptive to that kind of information, which makes my life really easy, that people are more receptive from it. One thing about, when you mentioned the jinn's not too different than ETs. And I had a lot of ET experience and ETI experiences, and they are very, very similar to the jinn. And if people want to understand what ETs and ETI are, they have to start studying jinn. They're not so much different. So that's not, people, even with disclosure, they're not going to think jinn. A Muslim will probably think jinn. And this is blending. We're going to see a lot of religions start coming together, whether it be Islam or Christianity. I think that even a couple of years ago, Chrislam or something like that was going to come out. And you see we're going to see a lot of religions kind of coinciding. I don't see that much with like certain religions like Buddhism and stuff. The Buddhism's on their own level, but the general Abrahamic religions are going to definitely kind of start coinciding with the one to wait for their deity to come back, if you will. But I don't think it's going to be how they think it's going to be. I think it's going to be extraterrestrial in nature.
That's fascinating. So you think the extraterrestrials are going to make themselves known soon?
They already are. It's more about people becoming aware of their presence. You know what I mean? So it's in that process. Can they just uncloak right now and all manifest? Yeah, but what's conducive to the human consciousness? That doing such a thing is going to split a human's consciousness in half, and that's going to be a hell of a lot harder to reassemble that assemblage point back into normalcy and, in a sense, reprogram them. So they can't just go, bloop, we're here, because that's going to shatter people's paradigms. So it's a thing where people start naturally starting to question, even if it's the smallest things, like questioning the COVID, stuff like you guys are talking about. those little questions that people ask start opening up little doorways within their mind for information. And we are being bombarded with information, whether it be disinformation or actual real information, whether it be through electronic means, whether it be through, extraterrestrial means, whether it be from the person sitting next to you telepathically and you don't even realize it. We are being bombarded with information, and it's all there for us to kind of siphon through at that time. So as these people are waking up, those little doorways are opening, that information seeps in. And I think as long as people are starting to ask themselves the deeper questions in life, more of that information will trickle in, personally.
Wow, that's great. If someone wants to study with you, you can be reached at thevioletgateway.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you also offering a number of classes and workshops, I can see, right?
Yep. All based on my books, 95% based on books.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your books are fascinating. I mean, they sort of they're based on direct experience, mm-hmm. which is rare because a lot of the occult books are based on previous occult books.
Yeah,
your books are actually based on
as I always say, it's academics studying a dead person's philosophy, and everybody themselves has their own sigils and symbols that they can utilize to connect to the other.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you can sit there and use John Dee's stuff, or you can use John Vermillion stuff, or you can use Scott's stuff. We all
That's what we were taught.
have
you make your own language.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And as long as we know the language that we're communicating with the other side, it's very personal and interpersonal. It's actually rather beautiful. Everybody has their own direct contact to God. The minute that we put something before it, like an angel or a jinn or even an ET, that's when we cut our connection from what we would consider God to be.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, thank you very much, John. And,
thank you, Scott.
Happy New Year. Blessings.
Happy New Year. Yes.
Great. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
And now we have Lady Rhea. She's going to end the evening with a prayer. I don't see her. Rhea, are you there? Not really sure. She said she was here. Steve, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to really quick bring up the idea as we talk about. I was talking about emergence of esoteric, and esoteric. There's also emergence of perception and the super spectrum. Purple beyond purple, as Crowley called it, the Malv zone, which Kenneth Grant called it, and John Keel's the Eighth Tower. I was talking to. So as what is the emergent sensory that will allow sort of disclosure? Will that be something of it? And thanks for running this, Scott. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much,
I'm
Steve.
personally curious on what Steve's really getting at there with like the whole Bob zone and that kind of thing, because that's typically based more on a Saturnian principle where the Saturnian's energy is coming back during the destruction phase to be able to cut that in. You're going to be able to see that more in the hues of mauve or violet. That's the Saturn's outer colors. Saturn's typical color is black, but if one perceptually views it from the astral plane outwardly of Saturn, you see a mauve or violet hue. And we do see those Saturnian energies coming back, especially with the Nephilim and Anunnaki.
And are we integrating those energies? That's possibly what's going on, an integration of
that.
Yeah.
Right. And that mauve and that violet energy, that's actually why I use my website, The Violet Gateway. The violet and mauve itself is a very transmutational color. Yes, see? Wow. And that it's purple and violet's a color of prayer and transmutation. So even though Saturn is typically looked at as that more darker void, negative aspects of that, we actually see that through transmutation. And as we transmutate emotions and mental patterns that every one of us are programmed with, typically speaking, that's not always such a fun process. It's usually pretty dark in itself. So I definitely do see a huge transmutation happening during these times. We are in the end times.
Do you think we're in the end times? Okay, yeah, no.
Yeah, but it's not like we're all gonna. It's not like we're all gonna die end times. You know what I mean? Like we're the end of the paradigm and the control.
Well, just really curious. We were talking about the 2012. I was talking to some people today, and said that was like a very much a false flag.
Yeah,
I believe. And it was a good false flag. And McKenna, I knew a little bit, and I'm curious as to it. As we spoke, I mentioned John Lilly before. We talked about Norba Weiner. We talked about Bernays. You know, there's this other tradition. There's an other undercurrent of occult, and I always go back to Spensky's term. We need to think in different categories. So possibly the category of that occult and esoteric that we're speaking about, we might need to jump that category, and that's what politics actually comes into in a little bit of a degree. You know, I started the Medical Freedom Party, and I got involved with politics 2 years ago after having a bunch of whatever I did. And, you know, and because I refused to be categorized as an esoteric, as an occultist who is not involved in politics. But anyway, I'll shut up and thanks again.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Steve. That's great, fascinating stuff. So, and the whole purple, Saturn being purple. I think to the book, The Purple Dawn of Creation, how, in the past, Saturn was the star of the Earth, right? That was at an early age. I mean, that's the theory. Before the sun, it was Saturn, and the whole Earth was sort of had a sort of purplish glow
from
to
readings. From readings that I've done with my council and everything, I've seen our solar system as a trinary system and a binary system. And as far as I know, Saturn was once considered like a black sun. So it still is being pulled through, like, almost, if we can look at our sun, the central sun that we see, Sol, it's more of an electrical current, while Saturn is more of that magnetic, that negative current that keeps it within balance.
Right.
So,
and if I can, the electromagnetic spectrum that we live in, since when I call it the cage of light, my guides or whatever have told to call it the cage of light. Why are we restrained by this electromagnetic solar energy, star stuff, when there are other currents of energy in whatever you want to call it, the whole? You know what I mean? But purple is possibly these emergent properties of colors coming into existence. We also can look at things like Lovecraft, The Color Out of Space, this idea of new perceptions, which will filter down hopefully into the common community, not just the esoteric community. We really have to hopefully hope and pray that the normies wake up and allow us to have our freedoms, like we started with, our freedoms and our liberties that are in danger in 2023. That's my prediction. In 2023, our freedoms and liberties are in danger. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. That was great.
I would definitely agree with Steve on that, because they're going to try to clamp down even harder. It's like they're losing a stronghold. They're losing their stronghold on everything. So anybody that's losing everything around them, they're going to try to squeeze harder and harder and harder and harder. From my contacts, they say it's going to get, pretty damn bad. I was told that when the streets run red with blood is when the upheaval will come. But they say it in such a positive way. They say something so dark, but they say it in such a positive way, and yeah, it's with the, to Steve, to talk about your, the whole EMF spectrum and stuff. That's actually something I added into my newest edition of my book. I'm re-releasing my book, and I was like, I need to expand on the whole EMF spectrum and why we see it that way. And I actually have a contact that I interact with, and for lack of better term, he would look like a gray, but he's not a gray. He's a different type of entity. And one of the things he said he's an ultraviolet entity communicating through an ELF spectrum. So you got to think these entities that are outside of our line of vision are actually coming from a different type of makeup. We are carbon-based beings, and because we are carbon-based beings, we're unfortunately programmed to only see this very tiny little spectrum within the totality that is around us, because our DNA is so, I guess you could say.
And remember, they're manipulating our DNA now, right? So what does that?
And they've been doing that for centuries and eons. So you can imagine how much we would have to unravel to really know our true selves.
Great. Well, thank you, guys. It's wonderful. Anything else, Steve?
I'm good, Scott, but thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate everybody. Well, again, the Medical Freedom Alliance meets every Sunday, 122 East 83rd Street. We're running the Medical Freedom Party. There's some people in the room who are in the Medical Freedom Party too and running as candidates. If anybody feels the need to run as a candidate, we will assist you in this occult world of politics, to be honest. and help you get through it, because we need to maintain our liberties and our freedoms, which are being taken away. So I'll stop with that. But again, thanks everybody. You were great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. That was awesome. And politics is the new
Scott,
occultism, right?
If I could add something here.
Sure.
Gary Null just had a fellow on the air on Friday, I believe it was, talking about a major march happening in Albany, January 8th. And there is some truly heinous, ridiculous legislation that is pending right now, having to do with allowing, this is right up your alley, Steve, that is going to allow, if it passes, for underage children to make medical decisions without parental consent.
Right.
I mean, major decisions.
Right.
Vaccines is just part of it.
Right.
You probably know more about that than I do.
It's a transhumanist agenda and taking I'm very familiar with the march. Like I say, our group, the MFA, we meet every Sunday. We've been doing it for 2 years, every Sunday. We didn't do it Christmas and New Year's because of these Sundays, but otherwise we're at 122 East 83rd Street every week. We are probably at the forefront of this. We invite speakers to come. So if anybody would like to speak at one of our meetings about something like this, please be in contact. You can get my contact information from Scott. But this is, the rubber has hit the road, right?
Yeah, we're at that time. And, as I was saying earlier about empowerment, I know you use the word force, but anyway, I like power. And the thing is this is exactly the kind of issue. It's very concrete. It's staring at us in the face about our liberty and freedom, and they're taking it away. And it's just so apparent. It's so blatant that,
if we do not control our bodies, we are slaves. If we do not control our bodies, we are slaves.
It's that simple. Yep. And I don't know why the Supreme Court feels it has some jurisdiction, especially over a woman's body. I never heard of anything so absurd, but such are the times we're living in. But it sounds great what you're doing, Steve, and I really
thank you.
applaud it. I really applaud
And
it.
Elizabeth, who's in the room, is involved. We have a lot of people involved. So we've had 1,200 people pass through our doors in the last 2 years, I'm told. 1,200 people. So please come visit. And again, I don't want to talk too much. I have a habit. But thank you, Scott, again, and thanks everybody.
Happy New Year. How are you?
Happy New Year, everyone. The conversations tonight have been absolutely fascinating. Again, Scott, I want to thank you for inviting me to be on tonight. Always happy to be with you for New Year's and all the folks out there. And I am a high priestess of the New York Coven of Witches for the last 50 years. February 2nd will be my 50th anniversary. And
let me say, she's an icon in the community. She's also known as the Witch Queen in New York. So that's,
that's because I've been around a long time. But tonight, every year, Scott, I like to choose a deity and a candle spell, because I'm known for my enchanted candles, to bless everyone who will be watching the video live or afterwards, or the recording. Focus on the candle above me. It's I made a special Ganesha candle because I'm turning to Ganesha for road opening, because we need our paths cleared. We have too many obstacles, as the gentleman before me was speaking about. There's a lot of roadblocks in our way. And Ganesha is the great lord of obstacles. He removes obstacles. So I created this candle for blessing everyone who sees this candle connect to Ganesha. He will help you to remove your obstacles. But the other thing I like to always do is combinations of magic. You know me. I pulled I was going to do a medicine card, but then I said, I think we need to see what goddess is coming into the new year for us. And very interesting that I chose Ganesha days ago to be the blessing for tonight, for the new year. But I pulled Yemaya, which is in the Goddess Oracle deck, the golden opportunities. So I believe in my heart that there will be many golden opportunities this year, and that Ganesha will be the road opener so that we don't miss out on them. Very often good opportunities come to us and we pass them up, we pass them by. So these blessings that I'm doing tonight are for everyone to have a fortuitous 2023 in their endeavors, their dreams, and making things possible. And the awakening, yes, the awakening has been happening. I've watched it grow from a little shop on Henry Street in 1972 to across the world. So many people have gotten involved or joined covens or became more aware or became more conscious about the feminine principle, the feminine energy. And it seems the more that's grown, as they were speaking earlier, the more they're trying to step on it. They don't want the duality of life to be properly done. You know, we can't have an all feminine rule, and we can't have an all masculine rule. What we need now is a humanarchy, where it's a human condition of being kind, compassionate, awareness. You know, I'm also a Buddhist. I'm a practicing Buddhist. I practice the magical principles of Buddhism. And so also Ganesha is also considered a Buddha as well as a deity. So in the dualities of this, very often when I went to Buddhist temples in Chinatown right before 9/11, I was in the Diamond Buddhist Center, and they must have had like everywhere you look, there was a statue of Ganesha. And this was a Chinese Buddhist practice, but they greatly believed in Ganesha as the lord of obstacles, or the Buddha who can eradicate what holds us back. So I'm going to do some mantra for all of us to invoke Lord Ganesha to descend and remove our obstacles from having golden opportunities in 2023 for your career, for your marriage, for your life, for your love life, for your blessings of your home, so that you may always have, that you have abundance, that you have growth, both material and spiritual, and that you become more conscious of the universe around you. So I'm going to start with Om. So breathe in deep. Om. Om. Om Shri Ganesha Nama, 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 Om Shri Ganeshaya Namah, 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 Om Shri Ganesha Yanama. I bow to the Lord of Obstacles, Om Ganapati, Om Shri Ganesha Yanama. I bow to thee and thank thee for the becoming the remover of all obstacles in our lives, and bless all who see this film. Bless them all with the awakening of their lives for good fortune. Bring them a fortuitous road ahead. Bring them the golden opportunities and give us the good life that we all deserve. Namaste. And of course, blessed be. And one of the reasons that I chose Ganesha also tonight is he is equated with the god Mercury, and considering Mercury is in retrograde, we could use it to do opposite things, which can bring us back, missed opportunities. So also we are reaching to what we've not achieved to come back to us, that these new opportunities are opening the road for 2023. I do want to invite you to follow me on Instagram under Lady Rhea Enchanted, where I do post free lectures and classes on different, esoteric and occult subjects. And I perform also live at EV Florist, 247 East 10th Street. I'm there 2 Saturdays a month, and I am doing free lectures and classes as a give back to the community of New York that raised me this last 50 years, supported me, has given me love and many opportunities for learning so many aspects of the occult sciences, from going to Weiser's bookstore when it was in a basement, to the Warlock shop and working there, to the Magical Child, to opening enchantments and opening magical realms, and being a part of the occult community the last 50 years has been a great pleasure. And I really am grateful, very grateful for all that I've received over the last 50 years from my teachers. And now I'm giving back. So I am doing these free lectures. Right now, if you go on Lady Rhea Enchanted, you can see the free tarot class that I'm offering. It's a crash course, and the Gods of Peace and Protection. And on January 7th, if you want to join me in person, come to EV Florist. And if you want to see me live or watch the video, it will be on the Gods of Prosperity. I'll be giving a lecture on prosperity for the new year. I look forward to many new endeavors with Scott. Scott and I have plans to release a lot of other types of classes and events and live events. So thank you all and for joining us tonight, and may Ganesha and Mercury and open your road and make your life very fortuitous with golden opportunities. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Ria. That was great. And thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. That was very, very interesting conversations, and hope to continue them in the future. So everyone, Happy New Year, blessed be, and have a great
be
2023.
Happy New Year.
Okay, take care.
Happy
Blessings,
New
everyone.
Year,
you.
Scott. Happy New Year, everyone.
Great.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Happy New Year. Thank you. Bye.
Everyone. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night, darling. Blessed be.